late for every meeting.
All right, we are live on YouTube. Janet, I'm going to toss this back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I sounded like a news anchor.
We lost Commissioner Connolly. He was on.
Somehow he's over on the attendees. I'll just move him over.
Okay.
There we go.
I have UGTV ready to go. It'll start in about a minute and 10 seconds.
Have we heard from Commissioner Ernst today, Janet?
No, but I talked to him. I heard from him the other day.
Okay. Oh, there he is.
He wouldn't miss out on the meeting.
There he is.
I was trying to use my iPad and it didn't work, so I had to pull out my Surface.
Gotcha. So now you got to stay seated. You don't have that iPad to walk around with.
We are live on UGTV.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're just waiting for Gunner.
Okay. We lost Commissioner Armstrong.
Let me see if
She was on. She's been freezing up a couple of times, so I wonder if she's having internet connection issues. There she is. She's back.
okay.
That's right. And there's Gunner.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Gunner.
Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Carson, we are live on TV, so whenever you want to start is fine.
Okay. Great, thank you. I want to welcome everybody to the October 12th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. My name is Jeff Carson. I'm chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals Commission. With us tonight is Nathan Reason. He is vice chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have Gunnar Hand, director of land use and urban planning on the Zoom call. Janet Parker, you'll be hearing a lot from tonight, is the executive assistant to the Department of Land Use and Urban Planning. We have Kim Portillo, and we with the Department of Land Use and Urban Planning staff, and Patrick Waters with the Unified Government Legal Counsel. We also have Sarah White with the Engineering and Public Works Department. We have the following Board of Zoning Appeals commissioners present this evening, in addition to Commissioner Reasons, Commissioner James Ernst, Commissioner Jake Miller, Commissioner Brandy Armstrong, Commissioner James Connolly, Commissioner Karen Jones, and Commissioner Mark Mueller. We also have Byron Toy, who just joined us with the Department of Land Use and Urban Planning. I'm going to now turn the meeting over to Secretary Parker, who will read the opening statement.
We would like to welcome those participating by telephone or Zoom to the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Due to COVID-19, the members are participating remotely. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. Please note the following instructions for the meeting. If you are joining by Zoom video, please make sure you have an appropriate background and plan to stay visible during the meeting. Please don't get up and walk around. When speaking, if you have not been announced by the chairman, you must raise your hand feature and wait to be unmuted by the chairman. Board members, use the raise your hand feature to speak, and please state your name when you begin to speak. If you need to recuse or if you need a personal break, use the raise your hand feature. If you are having issues getting in the Zoom meeting, please email planninginfo@wycokck.org and let Secretary Parker know. Proper meeting decorum is expected of all participating in the meeting, and anyone who fails to act properly may be removed from the meeting. The city reserves the right to discontinue a meeting if any improper behavior occurs which prevents the uninterrupted conduct of business. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. The applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case, which includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the board will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. All persons wishing to speak in favor will be recognized and allowed to do so at that time. Then those in opposition will be recognized to make their statements and ask questions, with each member of the public being given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker's time may be extended in 5-minute intervals by 2/3 majority vote of the board. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the board if a question is directed to them. The staff will make their recommendation. The board will discuss the application and make their decision with a brief statement of the reason for the motion preceding the making of the motion. Motions to approve shall include the staff stipulations unless otherwise stated in the motion. Mr. Chairman, we have one application on our Board of Zoning Appeals agenda this evening, and that is appeal number 2385, Andrea Westhoff, for property at 13635 Hollingsworth Road. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
No.
Okay, Ms. Westhop, are you in the audience? If you could please, I don't see your name. If you could just please raise your hand. Okay, here we go. Janet is not allowing me to ask her to unmute. Do you have me down as the host? There we go. Ms. Westhop?
Yes, this is Andrea.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you guys
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, if you could go ahead and please speak up and give us your name and address, please, and tell us about your project.
My name is Andrea Wishup. Address is 2300 Hutton Road, Kansas City, Kansas. We're trying to do a plot here at this property, and one of the lots will no longer meet the agricultural zoning, so we need to rezone the smaller portion of this property.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? If you do, please raise your hand electronically, please, and I'll unmute you to speak. I am not seeing anyone raise their hand. I'm going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting. We'll go to staff and get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. As Ms. Westhop mentioned, this variance is created through a subdivision that you will hear in the Planning Commission hearing a little bit later. So essentially what you have is a huge 90+ acre parcel. Let me see if you can see better. 90+ acre parcel in the Piper neighborhood. It has already had an existing single-family farmhouse carved out of it and rezoned as R1. There's a second single-family farmhouse adjacent to it that they essentially want to cut out and turn into rezone to R1, which again you'll hear at the Planning Commission. But what that does is it leaves a non-contiguous frontage on the street road, which is less than, each one is less than the 660 required by Ag Y Code zoning. Combined, it's more than 660, but again, it's not contiguous. We recommend approval. I think we've added some stipulations such as, requiring only one access. So they're not going to get a driveway on this side of the frontage and a driveway again on this side of the frontage, kind of pick it as one. But essentially, as we understand it, the owner wants to subdivide the land, sell off the single family home and keep farming the property, which we recommend approval of.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Mueller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please, Janet.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Bowler,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Cho.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal with the staff stipulations passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. And that does conclude the agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Is that correct, Janet?
That is correct.
Okay, we will reconvene at 7 o'clock for the, sorry,
30.
6:30, excuse me, I'm ahead or behind. We'll reconvene at 6:30 for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you all. Janet and Gunnar, are you both ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, I have the time at 6:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all to the October 12th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Unified Government. My name is Jeff Carson. I will be the chair of this evening's meeting. Also on hand on the Zoom, we have Karen Jones, who is the vice chair of Planning and Zoning. Gunnar Hand is with us, the director of Land Use and Urban Planning. Janet Parker, who you will be hearing a lot from this evening, is the executive assistant to the Department of Land Use and Urban Planning. We have Byron Toy and Kim Portillo of the Department of Land Use and Urban Planning staff, along with Martin Tangira and Sarah White with the Public Works and Engineering Department. And we have Patrick Waters with Unified Government Legal Counsel. We do also have the following Planning Commission members present: Commissioner James Ernst, Commissioner James Connolly, Commissioner Nathan Reasons, Commissioner Mark Mueller, Commissioner Brandy Armstrong, Commissioner Cherish Cho, and Commissioner Jake Miller. I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over now to Secretary Parker, who will read the opening statement.
We would like to welcome those participating by telephone or Zoom to the meeting of the City Planning Commission. Due to the COVID-19, the members are participating remotely by Zoom webinar. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. Please note the following instructions for the meeting. If you are joining by Zoom video, please make sure you have an appropriate background and plan to stay visible during the meeting. When speaking, if you have not been announced by the chairman, you must use the raise your hand feature and wait to be unmuted by the chairman. Planning Commission members use the raise your hand feature to speak. Unmute your microphone when it is your time to speak, and please state your name when you begin to speak. If you need to recuse yourself or if you need a personal break, use the raise your hand feature. If you have called in by telephone only, or if you are having trouble logging into the Zoom meeting, please email planninginfo@wycokck.org, as Secretary Parker is monitoring that email. Proper meeting decorum is expected of all participating in the meeting, and anyone who fails to act properly may be removed from the meeting. The city reserves the right to discontinue a meeting if any improper behavior occurs, which prevents the uninterrupted conduct of business. The Planning Commission is a voluntary body of citizens which will review each zoning proposal. For all change of zones, special use permits, vacations, and preliminary plan reviews on tonight's agenda, the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the Unified Government Board of Commissioners, who will then make the final decisions on Thursday, October 29, 2020. For final plats and final plan review heard tonight, the Planning Commission's decision is final and there will not be another hearing. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the Planning Commission will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be called upon and allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be called upon and allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker may request to extend their time, and the Planning Commission may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will then be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the commission if a question is directed to them by Chairman Carson. The Planning Commission will discuss the application and make their recommendation. If persons in opposition want to formally protest a change of zone or special use permit, a means is available by a legal protest petition, which can be obtained along with the necessary instructions by emailing the Urban Planning and Land Use Department at planninginfo@wicokck.org tomorrow morning. Any application receiving a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission will appear on the consent agenda of the Unified Government Board of Commissioners. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the Unified Government Commission, or other interested parties, the Planning Commission's recommendation will be adopted. The consent agenda is heard at the beginning of the meeting at 7 p.m. The Planning Commission will also have a consent agenda as part of their meeting this evening. The consent agenda is the first part of the agenda, and items on the consent agenda are final plats, final plans, or special use permit renewals that have received a staff recommendation to approve. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the staff, a member of the Planning Commission, or other interested parties, the staff recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Planning Commission at one time. I will read a list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the chairman will ask if there are any requests to remove items. This is your time to raise the hand feature, be recognized, and request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if you do not agree with the staff recommendation. The Planning Commission is required to disclose contacts about any item on the Planning Commission agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the Commission will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. Please note that your opinions will be forwarded to the governing body for their consideration in making a final decision. In addition, those who receive notices for this evening's hearing will again receive them for the hearing on Thursday, October 29, 2020. I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Mr. Chairman, before I read them, I would like to note so everyone understands what I'm doing. The plats have corresponding plan reviews, so I'm reading them together so it makes sense. Consideration of the September 14, 2020 City Planning Commission minutes. Special use permit application SP 2020-83, Mark and Pamela Rowe with Rowe Ridge Vineyard and Winery. Renewal of a special use permit for live entertainment at 11255 Leavenworth Road. Special use permit application SP 2020-84, Jason Newman. Renewal of a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 4112 Booth Street. Turner Logistics Center, third plat. Final plat for 6 lots, and it corresponds with plan review application PR-2020-20, final plan review for the second of multiple buildings in the Turner Logistics Park at 747 North 69th Street. Co-Part 2, final plat for 2 industrial lots and the corresponding plan review application PR-2020-29, Ben Stevens with Copart, final plan review for outdoor vehicle storage at 8440 and 8600 Gibbs Road. Turner Logistics Center, fourth plat, final plat for 4 lots and the corresponding plan review application PR-2020-28, Brett Powell with Turner Industrial, LLC. Final plan review for the 3rd building of the Logistics Park for warehousing, distribution, and light manufacturing business at 806 and 915 North 69th Street. Hart Industrial Park, second plat. Final plat for 3 commercial lots at 5900 Speaker Road. Chairman Carson, the agenda indicates that Hart Industrial Park plat is in conjunction with Plan Review PR-2020-26, and they are 2 separate applications. Also on the agenda has PR-2020-26 on the consent agenda. It needs to be removed and taken over to the non-consent agenda because it is a preliminary and final plan review, and only final plan reviews are on the consent agenda. The items I have just read are on the consent agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact on any of these items?
No.
No.
Please include the following items as part of the record for all of the items on the consent agenda: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publication in the Echo for the special use permits, and the notices to property owners. The commission will vote to approve in one vote these items unless someone requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda.
Thank you, Janet. Commissioner Connolly, I see your hand up. Do you have a question, or do you want to have something removed from the consent agenda? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Commissioner Connolly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, remove SP 2020-83.
2020-83. Okay, is there anyone else on the commission that would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the public that would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda for special consideration at tonight's meeting? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So Janet, if you'll remove the items 2020-83.
Okay.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the remaining items.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve the remaining consent agenda items made by Commissioner Mueller, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda with the staff conditions passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we'll now go back to the one item that was removed from the consent agenda. That is special use permit application SP-2020-83, Bark and Pamela Rowe. Renewal of a special use permit for live entertainment at 11255 Leavenworth Road.
Thank you. Mrs. Rowe, I see that you're in the audience. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself and give us your name and address, please, and tell us about your project.
Pamela Rowe, Row Ridge Vineyards and Winery, 11255 Leavenworth Road, Kansas City, Kansas, 66109. This is simply a renewal of a permit that we've had for the last, this is our third permit renewal for our special use permit for entertainment.
Okay, and you've had live entertainment before at your location?
We have.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Connolly?
Yes, Ms. Rose. Is there any reason why you renewed this late?
Mainly because of the COVID situation, and we were not open until after Memorial Day this year. Just lots of things going on differently in our business, so we delayed renewing because of that.
So when it expires, do you understand that the permit is no longer active?
Correct. We have had no entertainment this year.
Okay, because you stated you've had this permit like 3 times.
This would be our third one, yes.
Well, I don't know what you're saying by because of the COVID that you couldn't renew it, because I think the offices for the planning and zoning was open. So I need to, because I'm a stickler on things not being renewed on a timely basis and being on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Ms. Rose,
I would like, our business was not open for 3 months. And so we did not know what we were going to do going forward. As we saw our business returning, we decided that we probably would want to renew our entertainment permit for next year. We will not be doing any live entertainment. We don't feel it's safe at this point. So that's one of the reasons we didn't renew earlier, is because we knew that this year is going to be a different year, and it's been a very different year for us business-wise.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that came to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request this evening? Please raise your right hand, or excuse me, please raise your hand if you did. I am not seeing anyone that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition, so we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Again, this SUP is specifically for live entertainment only. In a previous renewal, we looked a little bit deeper into state law, which does not require a winery to have an SUP. So that's why it kind of is still mentioned in some of the language of the staff report. We added a few conditions of approval, worked with the applicant on some improvements to the property, requirement of a sign permit, things of that nature. But we recommend approval on this one is for 5 years. And to Commissioner Connolly's point, again, when we received the application from the applicant, they did note that they had some issues getting this done in a timely fashion because of COVID-19. So we let it roll as a consent agenda item, and that's why it's there.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve made by Commissioner Mueller, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Strong?
Aye.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mueller?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the special use permit subject to the staff's conditions passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on October 29th, Thursday, October 29th at 7 p.m. Via Zoom in front of the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that completes the consent agenda. All of the special use permits on the consent agenda will go before the Board of Commissioners on Thursday, October 29th at 7 p.m. We will now move on to the non-consent agenda. We have
Janet, before you do, anybody who is on the Zoom call that had your case was heard on the consent agenda, you're free to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we won't be hearing any more about your case, so you're free to go ahead and sign off. Thank you.
I have 2 items that we're going to hear together. Change of zone application 3232, Andrea Westhop with Atlas Surveyors. Change of zone from AG Agriculture, Wyco District to R1 Single Family District to allow the property owner to sell the buildings and retain the land at 13635 Hollingsworth Road. And it also has a corresponding final plat, Reinhaus Edition, for 3 single-family lots. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo, and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Westhop, I see you're still available to us. If you go ahead, please state your name and address for the record and go ahead and tell us about your plans.
Andrea Wishup, 2300 Hutton Road, Kansas City, Kansas. Just have a large parcel of ground here. The owner wants to split off and sell to the neighbor and retain the rest of the parcel for agricultural use.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no members of the public that wish to speak, I'll go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting. We'll go to staff, gun our hand, and get comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is associated with the Boza case we just heard in the previous meeting, Boza 2385. As Ms. Weisthop mentioned, this is a rezone from AG Wyco to R1 single family district. There are no NOVs, or we received no opposition or support for this project. With the associated conditions, we recommend approval.
Just one quick question, Gunnar. Was there a building that's to be demolished on that property?
There is an open codes case that we were sort of looking into that had mentioned one of the, I think, accessory structures that's to be platted off and sold was potentially removed. I don't know if Ms. Weishaupt knew anything about that case.
Does that have any bearing on the change of zone or the final plat for this?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Connolly, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on the motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, this is Janet.
Yes.
I will need 2 motions on this case. The first one will be for the change of zone and the second one for the plat.
Thank you, Commissioner Connolly and Commissioner Jones. I'm going to take the change of zone first. Is that okay? As the makers of the motion?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, this is for the change of zone. Motion for approval made by Commissioner Connolly, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on the change of zone? Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Moeller?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the change of zone application subject to the staff's conditions passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion on the final plat.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval made by Commissioner Mueller, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion on motion for approval for final plat? Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the plat passes 8 in favor and none opposed, subject to the conditions.
Thank you. And this will be heard once again on October 29th at 7 p.m. before the Board of Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 items that will be heard together. Change of zone application 3234, Maria Magna. Change of zone from C1 Limited Business District to CP2 Planned General Business District for limited auto repairs at 4811 Parallel Parkway, and the corresponding special use permit application SP-2020-82 special use permit for limited auto repairs at 4811 Parallel Parkway. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo, and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose on this application?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
Miss Magana, are you in the audience? I see you there. Can you go ahead and unmute yourself, please, and give us your name, address for the record, and then tell us about your project.
My name is Maria Magana. The address is 4811 Parallel Parkway, Kansas City, Kansas 66104.
Okay. Go ahead and tell us about your project, what you'd like to do.
Well, as a business owner, I was hoping just to store tires, utilize the shop mainly for storage. As I was doing my storage and utilizing for what I needed, my main thing was to do car accessories, and I saw that people were asking about tires, so I decided to go ahead and apply for the special permit. And I think it'll benefit the community. I see a lot of cars driving by, and I think it'll be a benefit.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Connolly?
Now, will there be any tires stored on the outside?
No. If there will be, I was talking to Shauna about what are the permits for a container perhaps, but mainly have also an area where it could be, if it's on the outside, because for whatever reason, we are out of room on the inside. If we can store them on the outside, I would like also to apply later for a storage, either a container, but usually the people that come and pick up the disposals, they come like either once a week or twice a week, depending on how we need them. But whatever recommendations you guys will have, I will follow.
Well, I guess my whole thing is, one is close to where I live at, and I wouldn't like to see tires left out overnight outside, stored or stacked any type of way. So that's why I'm asking a question, Will. So when y'all leave the facility, will there be any tires outside that facility?
I don't think so.
You don't think so, or you don't?
I don't think so, but
aren't you the owner? Couldn't you make a decision?
I'm going to say yes.
The tires will be left outside.
Yes, and I am hoping to get an answer from Shauna as to if I can place a container, like a 20-foot container, like closed container, to store them inside that container rather than storing them outside.
How many tires do you think will be stored outside?
I'm going to be honest, and I think maybe 30 tires at the time. We have some room on the inside, but I don't want to say no, there will be not, because if we are like crazy busy, like I have a tire shop in Missouri, I have more room on this one. On that one, there is not much room. So yeah, if you guys allow me to put a container, a 20-foot container, I will store those tires inside the container, which I can paint the container to match the building. If you don't want any tires on the outside, I will do my best to have a 10-foot box truck daily there to store them in that truck. So there's no tires outside, like just on the open.
Well, I can let you know, I do not want any tires out there because that's close to where I live, and that area is always been cleaned up. We've had one owner of that building, and we had to take care of him because he wasn't taking care of the property correctly. All right, thank you.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that came to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request this evening? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting. We'll go to Staff Director Gunnar Hand for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. So as Ms. Magana mentioned, this is for limited auto repairs. Again, a C2 zone only allows limited auto repairs, so no auto body or no major engine repair, basically tire changes, oil changes, things of that nature. There has been, over the last 4 years, multiple notices of violations on this property. So we've been happy to have Ms. Magana work with us on this project. She's been willing to take all of our conditions of approval and upgrade the property in line with the commercial design guidelines. Things like fencing, there is in fact a condition about no outside storage. Ms. Magana, if you did want to do a storage container, you would have to apply for a special use permit for that storage container. You can always apply for that after, depending on what happens with this project. But we've had that multiple times where an SUP for a storage container has come after the fact of a sort of change of zone site plan review. Other things that were part of this conditions of approval were things like redoing there's some, the parking lot is in disrepair. So fixing the parking lot, restriping it, adding ADA, doing some wainscoting on the maintenance part of the building over here, as well as some fencing for the property and general landscaping. So with all of those things considered, again, there was no opposition or support of this project, but staff recommends approval, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Connolly, questions?
Yeah, Gunter, so she can store tires on the outside?
No.
She cannot?
No.
All right. Even though it's not a storage, she can't like stack them?
No outside storage.
None at all. All right, thank you.
Further questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. This would be, first, we're going to need two. One first for the change of zone.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve change of zone made by Commissioner Mueller, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion on change of zone? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the change of zone, subject to the conditions in the staff report, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion on the special use permit.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve special use permit made by Commissioner Mueller, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion on the motion to approve special use permit?
Mr. Chair, this is Director Hand. Just a
Yes.
quick note, the SUP is for 2 years.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion for approval for 2 years? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Armstrong,
Commissioner Armstrong?
Aye.
Thank you.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of SP-2020-82 for 2 years, subject to the conditions in the staff report, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on October 29th at 7 p.m. before the Board of County Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I have 3 items that we're going to hear together. And when we vote, we'll hear the master plan first, then the change of zone, and then the plat. Change of zone application 3236. Change of zone from AG Agriculture District to MP2 Planned General Industrial District for Urban Outfitters Distribution Center. Urban Outfitters preliminary plat for 1 industrial lot and master plan amendment MP-2020-7 master plan amendment from entertainment Prairie Delaware Piper master plan to business park in the Prairie Delaware Piper master plan. All 3 of these are at 10901 State Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo, and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose on this application?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Skovich, could you please go ahead and give us your name and address, please, for the record, and tell us about your project?
Good evening, Gunner and Plan Commissioners. My name is Greg Skovich. I live at 67 Thunderbird Drive in Indian Head Park, Illinois. Joining me this evening is Curtis Peterson, who's also going to help in the presentation.
Okay. Sorry, let me find him real quick.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kurt Peterson, if you can hear me now.
Yes, I can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, Chairman. This is Kurt Peterson here on behalf of the applicant, Hillwood Enterprises LP. My address is 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri. Again, here for Hillwood Enterprises, which Greg represents. And they are the developer for this project, for the ultimate owner, which is Urban Outfitters. What you can see on the screen is the property at issue. This is at the southeast corner of 118th and State Avenue, just west of the Speedway. It's bounded by Speedway Boulevard to the west there, and then State Avenue to the north. And then those are both obviously public streets. Then you have a private street owned by the Speedway Corporation to the south called Talladega Drive, as you can see on the screen there. This is 90 acres of undeveloped, just grass, grass turf. There's really no other signature natural features or anything on this site. Although I will note a natural feature is that this has significant grade changes to the southeast. So starting up at the hard intersection there, and then going down to the southeast as you go towards the Speedway, there's significant grade change. I point that out for a reason, which will become apparent here in a little bit as we discuss this. The application, as Ms. Parker introduced, is a rezoning / preliminary development plan, a master plan amendment, and a preliminary plat. With respect to the project before you tonight on this specific property for the applicant, I won't overdo it because I do know that all of us that work in Wyandotte County, live in Wyandotte County, are involved in economic development in the area, or anybody in real estate in the Kansas City area has heard about this project. This again is the Urban Outfitters warehouse and distribution project. It's almost 1.6 million square feet of space. It is a warehouse portion of the project there. As you look at the screen at the gray box, that's the building itself. You can see the central area and the west area on the screen are the warehouse and distribution area. You can see dock doors on the north where it's white, and you can see dock doors to the south where it's white. You can also see an office portion on the east side. So the east facade is the front of the building there, as indicated. That's where the employees enter, and that's the office parking area with all the landscaping and green you can see to the east of that main entry. In terms of circulation, you can see that there's an entry point when you come in off Talladega. So you're coming Speedway, north or south, you turn onto Talladega, and then you come to what's indicated on the screen there with the cross. That is an entry point off the private drive Talladega into the site. That is a truck entry that has a gatehouse there, a checkpoint, and again is the place for trucks to go in and out. Trucks will predominantly be coming here. It's designed so that they'll be coming to and from I-70 to the south at the 110th interchange. When you switch over to employees, which we will have a lot here, thank goodness, the employees will predominantly use State Avenue. So up at the top of the screen, you can see the main entry there into the site from State Avenue. Also during shift changes, there's an opportunity for people to come out kind of down to the southern part of the site, which is an eastern entry point on the private drive Talladega there. So that's just a secondary ingress egress, but the primary for employees is up at State Avenue as they come to the main east facade parking lot. In terms of employees, and I really want to accentuate this point, employees, because urban, as I've come to learn, is, there's so much emphasis in the company put on its employees, including on how they design their new homes like this, their new campuses. And so a few items I wanted to highlight for you as you really come to more deeply understand this project. One is the UG and Urban and the developer, Hillwood, worked very closely with KCATA because they knew employees need transportation. It's fundamental. And so there's a location near the northeast there as we zoom in, where there is a place for the bus drop off and transfer point there. And it's very important that it's there because it gets the employees right to where they need to enter the building and get to work. It's great because in working with KCATA, we've been able to get an express route here from Indian Springs, the large hub transfer point, directly to this location. So I really wanted to highlight that. That's been very important to Urban. And I know KCATA as well. Also for employees, we have a half-mile walking loop, which is a great amenity. That's a loop around that office parking lot that's highlighted in green on the screen there. And if people want to go a little further, they could always go out to the public right-of-way on State and Speedway, where we're putting in a 10-foot trail per the trail master plan of UG. That master plan calls for this, as is relevant for this site, it calls for those green lines along the two public right-of-ways there, along Speedway there, and then along State Avenue. So 10-foot trail and then a half-mile loop around the parking lot on a special trail for employees. Also for employees, 9,000 square feet of shaded outdoor dining area in the northeast corner, and then the southeast corner of the office portion of the building. So those are great areas for people to come out and dine and relax on a break. Also, just an overall note for the entire plan, just in terms of aesthetics and letting employees not feel like they have concrete or they're inside all day long. 32 acres or more than a third of the site is open space, including some significant water features, which provide both detention benefits, but also are just nice aesthetic benefits, as you can see indicated on the screen, those water features, a large amount of that space. So again, I say it one more time, employees are key here for this company and for the design of this site. Also along the public right-of-way, so Speedway on the west, and then State to the north, it's important to note that there is a 6-foot berm along that entire significant length. And on that berm is located what we'd call the street trees, right? To provide just a nice transition there from the public right-of-way to this site. What I want to end on before moving into some specifics for your consideration tonight in terms of summarizing the project are some really nice renderings, if we have those, if those can be pulled up, that just show the aesthetic of this project. And I want to say again, I subtly said it at the beginning, this is not a project where Urban Outfitters is swooping in and has a 5-year lease on a building. Urban Outfitters is having this excellent developer, Hillwood, come in and build them a campus, an amazing campus that Urban will own and will be here for a really, really long time. Some of you have heard them do presentations to the EDC before and just talk about the multi-generational view here for this site. They don't cut corners. They believe in quality. They believe in thoughtful design. As hopefully, me not being an architect, you can even look at this and say, this is not the typical warehouse distribution facility that we see anywhere, really. This is something special. So then you say, then why are you talking to me? Why don't we just vote or something like that? But I will say we always have something to talk about, right? In a project of this scale with this many details. The good news is that we have, as a team, worked closely with Director Hannah and his staff, and we've received and accommodated a lot of the excellent recommendations and suggestions for design. There are a few, and we number them very discreetly. We'll have it one piece of paper. You can see these. There's 7 items we wanted to call your attention. I would call them details. And just to inoculate against maybe a reaction where you'd say, why are we talking about 7 details? I will say, emphasizing, there have been lots of great suggestions that the project has accommodated, the project team that we're glad staff brought up, which we can, if we need to tonight, we can go through all those. But these are just 7 points that we'd like for you to consider tonight, very discreetly on one page to consider. And all I'm going to do with the balance of the time is run through these and obviously stand ready for your questions. So first of all, again, I'm numbering 1 through 7, and we'll put that sheet back up for you to see all of them. First of all is stipulation 3 in the staff report, or condition. When I say stipulation, it's labeled as a condition. Condition 3. This is what it says. It says a 10-foot sidewalk shall be constructed along State and Speedway, and you can see that that's exactly what we've done per the master plan. Then it says a 5-foot sidewalk shall be constructed the length of Talladega Drive. You'll remember Talladega Drive is the southern portion of the site that's owned by Speedway Corporation. It's a private drive. We have asked for one modification here. That's that you strike the requirement for a 5-foot sidewalk along Talladega. You ask why? One is we believe we have provided all the circulation that both the public and the employees need through the green lines on the plan there to get wherever they're going, whether they're going to Village West, to the northeast, or they're someday going to the southeast, or whether they're taking a walk. There's plenty of circulation, and again, we fit the master plan for trails. Also, you might say, but specifically, why not along Talladega? Well, Urban feels very strongly here. It's absolutely a safety issue. As you saw, our main truck entrance, and there are a lot of trucks coming from I-70, will come up Speedway, we'll take a right to go east, and we'll turn in at that truck entrance that we pointed out off of the private drive. We absolutely don't want, whether it's the public walking on a private street, just coming wandering down, or employees being invited to really walk along there. It absolutely is a safety issue. We agree with staff's factor to be considered number 13, where staff said, rightly so, quote, pedestrian safety is of the utmost importance, end quote, in the context of not having conflicts with trucks. It's super important. And again, Talladega is a private street. It's frankly gated. There's nowhere to go. Down at the far east side of Talladega, there will continue to be a gate right here. So the overall context is we'd ask you we don't think this is useful, and not only useful, we think it's dangerous. Staff has pointed out there's other projects in the community that are great projects that have been built recently that are warehouse industrial projects or distribution projects, and said, so if they can do it, we can do it. Mr. Hain can say if that was a fair characterization, but keeping it short. And we would just say, look, we would ask that you look at the facts and circumstances of what I just walked through and ask us questions about this site. We would say that we think you'll find that this is safer than putting a sidewalk there, and there's no real drawback at all to the public by not having a 5-foot sidewalk along this private drive. That was number 1. Number 2 is stipulation number 9, Chairman. This is what staff said on stipulation number 9. The applicant states that the fence, and on the screen we'll show you with the cursor a perimeter fence that goes around the truck area. The cursor will start to show you around where the fence is. The applicant states that the fence will not be visible due to the berm. However, chain link does detract from the overall appearance, powder coated or vinyl. So you can see where this perimeter fence of the trucking area goes. And what our clarification or modification would be, Chairman and Commissioners, is the fence will not be screened with a berm from the private street Talladega or a portion of Speedway Boulevard south of Talladega, and I'll quickly explain. So first, the entire view from the right-of-way of Speedway, starting at Talladega and going north, as you can see, that whole extent, and then the whole State Avenue extent. So nearly all the project, all the sight lines, you can see nothing of this fence that's in the trucking area. You can not see it because there's a 6-foot berm, and there's also a 30 to 40 foot drop. And I repeat that, 30 to 40 foot drop from the public right of way to where you get to the street. We put in the staff packet, as you probably saw, the sight lines, engineered sight lines that show that what I'm saying is accurate. So you say, well, what's left? What's left is that when you are coming north on Speedway Boulevard and you're south of Talladega, so the cursor can go down there and show when someone's approaching, there's a period right about in there that you could look, crane your neck over to the east and look over and you could see a portion of the fence. Now I say you could see it. The closest point, if you took a measurement from the closest point to where the fence is to the right of way, you'd see it's about 2 football fields away. I measure everything at football fields because I can think of sitting at Arrowhead on one end and looking to the other. That is a really, just like you need binoculars when you sit in those seats to see the other end zone, this is a really long way. And as you can tell, that is the closest point at all. And as you head north, the berm takes over. So we would ask that our landscape plan, which puts landscaping along this southern edge of the property, along with the distances, and just the fact that this is a fence that frankly just isn't going to be seen from the public right of way, but for this slight exception of a little portion of Speedway, we would ask that you would put that in the staff report, put that in the recommendation so that the stipulation is accurate, that the fence will not be visible due to the berm. However, there is this small area where theoretically you could see it. So it's really more of a clarification point than anything on that stipulation. The third of 7 is stipulation 10. This is what the staff report says for stipulation 10. The applicant will raise the berm to screen views, and this will be confirmed at DRC before there's a grading permit approved. And by now you know which berms I mean. I mean the berms that run the full extent of Speedway from Talladega up to State, yep, and then all of State to the eastern edge of the property, the 6-foot berm and the huge drops in grade. And the reason we ask that this specific stipulation be omitted, deleted, is because we have proven with engineer drawings and sight lines in the packet with no pushback from staff as to their accuracy that you can, we have screened the dock doors, which was an issue from the public right of way there. We've screened the fence as we just talked about. And so we'd ask that we omit this because it's absolutely been satisfied, and really for our design team and for the developer and for the owner caused confusion because we're really not in a position to raise the berms any higher, and it's absolutely not necessary. Here are the sight lines, commissioners, so you can just very quickly, again, I don't want to belabor it too long unless you want to come back with questions, but you see the berm from the right of way, and then you see the extreme drop off in grade, and you see you're screening the dock doors and the fence, which was the last stipulation we talked about. Number 4 is stipulation 13. Staff stipulation says this: plant and maintain native grasses and wildflowers in the future expansion footprints of the building, the trailer storage, and the employee parking lots. So quickly, let's point out where those 3 spots are. So let's first point out the expansion footprint of the building over to the west, that dotted line, that's the future expansion. Then you have the trailer storage there. And then you have the employee parking lots to the south of the employee parking lot shown there in orange. So the ask from staff is, rather than putting in, I call it turf, right? Grass, seeding for grass, like with the rest of the site, that we would put in wildflowers and native grasses. Our response is, again, we're all about quality and we like great design, as you can see from the renderings, but native grasses and wildflowers, which some of you have firsthand experience, take a lot of work, resources, and years to stabilize, which we're going to be here a long time, but we're also, these expansions are literally on those places, and the resources and time to do that just don't make sense to us, at least. We'd rather put just grass and have our landscaping plan take over. But also, staff mentioned specifically, I wanted to address this, that they were looking for more natural amenities, I think was the phrase, or something similar to that. And these grasses and wildflowers would provide that. But what's a little bit ironic is these areas need to be seeded or done something with them only because they're being disturbed for construction. They're turf today, they're grass, and we want to restore that, which is consistent with, if you have been to that area, with what's all around there. So we really think this blends in more with the surrounding properties to begin with, to go back to turf. So lastly, I would just say this is more consistent anyway with Urban's architecture. You can kind of hear in their name. They have a little bit of a, I say this in a good way, edge, kind of that urban edge, but it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's unforgettable. And the grass, rather than more native, the turf rather than native grasses, really fits with their architectural and their landscaping plan. And frankly, because because you can't barely see these really almost anywhere from, at least in the public's eye, because of the berms and the huge distances. It's just another reason we'd ask for your deference to Urban's kind of subjective eye towards what they'd like in these spaces.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you are at your time. You can ask the commission for an additional 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm at stipulation 507. May I finish that and briefly conclude?
Does anyone on the commission have any problem with extending the speaker's time for an additional 5 minutes?
No.
Okay, seeing no objections, go ahead. Please go ahead and continue.
Thank you, sir. Number 5 is stipulation 17. It says, staff says, landscaping is required to screen all parking areas and service entries. And then here's the key part. This includes perimeter parking, which they're talking about the office parking on the east there for the employees, and the trash enclosure. So first on the office parking, this whole site is being zoned MP2, and there wouldn't be any sort of perimeter parking, shrubbery and things like that that would be required. But we've agreed, this is the give and take again, that we want to do some CP2 like landscaping elements here, because again, we're going to be here forever. But when it came to the shrubbery requirement as a border all around the employee parking lot, we really just didn't feel like that was the right move. Long term, frankly, really long term, we didn't think that was going to look as good, because as you know, if you have it at your house, one of those dies and then there's a gap and there's a gap elsewhere. And we thought it's better just to do a nice, dense landscaping plan, which you see on the screen. There's plenty of green. But again, we didn't ring the parking lot with shrubbery. Also, a lot of times we do the shrubbery because of headlight issues, right? To help with that. Well, clearly we're well below the public right away from a grade perspective. And there's no headlight issues getting to other cars from our parking lot. And then also there's a huge distance from the public right away to get to this parking lot, let alone the grade change. So with that, we'd ask again for the ability not to do any sort of shrubbery around the parking lot, but otherwise get support for the landscaping plan around the parking lot that you just saw. The other element of that was the trash enclosure. We don't have any traditional trash enclosures. All we have is several trash compactor, fully enclosed elements on the north side of the building, which we're zooming in on. And those will be up against the building. As I said, that's 30 to 40 feet below State Avenue right there. Plus there's the berm, plus there's the landscaping on top. No one can see those. We would ask not to have to, very energy efficient, unless you're in a public hearing for your lights to go out. We would ask that we would not have to do any more, put any more resources or time into screening those trash compactor units, which are picked up and taken away too. So it's functional. And again, absolutely no one could ever see those. The last two stipulations are very similar, so I'll go quickly and summarize them together. 6 is stipulation 18, which is saying that the BPU transformer shall be completely screened on 3 sides by effectively landscaping. What we're proposing is, because we have those on the south side where the cursor is showing, that's the only place we have these big transformers up against the building. We're asking for functional reasons, because there's no aesthetic problem, that we could just put them up against the building. These again are transformers, boring boxes, because the closest view from Speedway off to the west there, where you might get a view angle, is approximately 1,600 feet, about a quarter of a mile, which again, I probably don't need to say more, really, really far to get to those. And we just didn't have a good functional way. We wanted to screen those there and didn't see any purpose for it. The last one is very similar. It's number 7 of 7, stipulation 20, talking about how mechanical equipment or other utilities need to be screened in similar ways. And the only item we want to say here has to do with our generators, which are located right near the transformers I just pointed out. So it's really the same sort of request that I just made based on the closest public right-of-way view. For a little glimpse is about a quarter of a mile away. And it helps us functionally to be able to have those there without trying to ring them with little strips of landscaping that will die or walls that get in the way or things like that. So with that, and time running out, I thank you for the additional 5 minutes. I'll conclude this way, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, before taking questions. Obviously, this is not a typical warehouse project, as I said. Urban is here for a really, really long time with an amazingly large investment here. They believe in quality. They believe in their employees, as I said, and we'd ask for your support tonight for the plat, the master plan change, the rezoning, and the associated plan, and for your consideration of these seven requests to modify staff's recommendation. We'd love to answer your questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was lengthy and detailed, and I appreciate all of it. And I'm sure there will be some at some point in the discussions here. At this time, is there any questions for Mr. Peterson or staff, or excuse me, or the developers regarding this this project from the commissioners? Okay, excuse me. Screens are jumping around on me. Just one second. Okay, I'm not seeing any from the commission at this point. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the public that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? I've got a couple of hands up. I will first go to Mr. Greg Kendall. Greg, if you'd go ahead and give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Greg Kendall, 727 Minnesota Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101. I'm Greg Kendall, president of the Wyandotte Economic Development Council. Just quickly wanted to say we're in support of the request by the client for the rezoning and the master plan amendment. You all have heard quite a bit about the project. This has got a lot of community benefit to it, and I realize you all don't always take in all of those community benefits, but I do think that one of them highlighted is the transit connection. Super excited about how Urban Outfitters has been able to incorporate this significant public benefit into their project, working with the UG Transit. I think it blends well with the Kansas Speedway to the east of this facility, the future size and scale of the American Royal directly to the north, and then the Bonner Crossing project proposed in Bonner Springs just directly to the west. So I think the size and scope of this project blends well. We certainly appreciate the attention to the details to incorporate a more office look at this location and to blend it in with, again, all of these other projects that are coming together. We think they've taken a great deal of time and effort to build a look and feel for this project that will help bring some real heft to this corner, but also help with the sight lines, with the future projects coming down the line. And we would request that the Planning Commission give some strong consideration for the 7 items noted by the client. Within, again, I'll just reiterate our support for the project and appreciate Urban Outfitters being a part of this.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have a Mr. Edgar Galicia. Sir, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, give us your name and address, please.
Edgar Galicia, Central Avenue Betterment Association, 1621 Central Avenue. As much as we support all of these projects in the generation of jobs, I would like to ask for more clarity on the amount of jobs that are being generated, proposed, and the quality and kind of these jobs, so that the importance of this project is not just based on whether or not it has a beautiful building, but it actually brings jobs to our people that are relevant to our community and to our economy.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this project? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call on Mr. Peterson. If you go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Could you address the question regarding the types of jobs, the quality of the jobs?
Sure. And Greg will jump in on top. I will just say both, I've experienced this across the country and I know it to be true here, that there are some folks that, and I don't know whether this is kind of a background premise in the gentleman's question, it may not be, but some folks think that when there's more automation, that is kind of antithetical to more and good jobs. But what I found from firsthand experience, and I know to be the case with Urban, is that when you have more automation, you actually, and especially with a project of this size and scale and what Urban is going to accomplish with this site, you not only create a lot of jobs, but you tend to create jobs where people are trained with new skills. And what that does is that ultimately, when you're a more skilled worker, then that leads to higher wages. So I think what's exciting here is this isn't, I'll say just carefully, just a large employment center that we're thrilled about coming to, Wyandotte County, but it's also one that it's going to have a lot of automation that's going to lead to more job training and higher wages. But Greg, I don't know if you had anything to add to that specifically about jobs.
Yes, Greg, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Greg Kendall. So they'll create about 2,000 jobs. Starting wage is $18 an hour for the logistics jobs, which is $4 higher than our current average wage in the logistics industry. And then, of course, the office jobs will be closer to about $25 an hour. But again, most of the jobs will be logistics. There is a commitment by Urban Outfitters to hire at least 35% of their employee base from Wyandotte County, which was part of the overall incentive proposal that was put together. And that's also tied back to the transit piece of it that we talked about, that there is a commitment to making sure that we connect our working poor in Wyandotte County to better jobs in the county, but we had to make sure that there was a transit connection. So that's why that's been brought up several times.
Okay, thank you. I have Mr. David Zeal. Go ahead and please unmute yourself, Mr. Zeal, and give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dave Zeal, Chief Development Officer, Urban Outfitters, 11 Buckman Drive, Newtown, Pennsylvania, 189440. Chairman and the commissioners, I've attended every public meeting representing this project. I've spent better part of a year and a half working with the groups. Greg, thank you for your kind words on Urban coming to the community. I'll speak to the gentleman with the question on the jobs. Everybody did a fine job representing the jobs, but candidly, folks, we're looking at this is the Linchpin distribution center for Urban Outfitters in a well over a 25-year long-term strategic growth. It actually takes over as our central distribution center, both east and west, where our business was derived. We were founded in Pennsylvania, and what I can tell you about the jobs, one, with the technology here, a shuttle and crane system, some words were spoke about that, but a very, to Greg's comments earlier, a very diverse mix of white collar and high paying blue collar jobs. We're committed to the community. We always seem to under promise the jobs and way over deliver, and I suspect this wouldn't be a difference there. People are our first priority, but all the representation, including Kurt. I haven't had a chance to meet Kurt yet, but Kurt, well done. Urban people are first. Everything from our work with Governor Kelly to healthcare incentives on this facility, to as well as the ATA and transportation, all to support the quality of life of our people, including a daycare initiative with incentives with the state to bring daycare, and not daycare necessarily to this facility, but potentially in the best position to help Wyandotte County and the various businesses in the region. So Urban is community first on every project we do. We're not, I'm not going to say any names about the other folks. We don't build distribution shed after distribution shed. This is a world headquarters component for us from a distribution perspective. And we look forward to many, many, many years of continued growth and quite honestly, multiple projects. When we made the decision on Kansas versus Missouri, it's something I worked a great deal of time on, and our company, our founder, Dick Kane, we're committed to putting our stakes in the ground here and continued development in Wyandotte County and Kansas altogether, and quite excited about it. But the jobs continued high training, high paying, people first, from health to child care, really trying to establish our key. And you know, I don't want to take too much time, but I want to tell you, our distribution centers are an attempt to not differentiate folks from our culture here in Philadelphia. The continuity, we want them to feel that they're part of Urban, that the values are there, that the quality in which we build, the quality in which we provide for them, from employee benefits to great benefit programs, to 401k, to high paying wage. It's all about us having an extension of who we are. If we can keep our culture from not being broken remotely, it's our number one initiative. And I'm really quite proud to be a potential partner in this community. And I've appreciated the warm welcome We will deliver the jobs. We will deliver the care. We will deliver everything that I've committed to the UG. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this project, please raise your hand. Seeing no others, we will close the public portion of the meeting. I've already got answers from Mr. Peterson, so we will now go to Director Hand for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Again, as was described by the applicant and others about this is the Urban Outfitters Distribution Center. As of right now, we've received no letters in opposition or support. It's a bundled project, as Ms. Parker mentioned. This is a change of zone, a master plan amendment, and a preliminary plat. This is similar to other distribution centers that we've had. This is a significant change to what the original vision for this parcel was, but it was done so in partnership with both the UG and the Kansas Speedway and others. Although it is a master plan amendment, or because it is a master plan amendment and change of zone, we worked closely with the applicant on multiple conditions of approval. And if I may, I think I'd like to go through each one that they mentioned before and give you our response, and then we can discuss as needed across the board. But I think in general, what we would say is that, it is currently essentially, as they mentioned, just an open field. We did focus a lot of our attention on sort of this screening from public view. It is a massive building. You will see that building from any part of the state and or speedway, but we wanted to make sure that, again, because it was low and because we're berming up high, that we would sort of block all the back of house stuff to it, if you will. So screening was a big part of a lot of our conditions of approval, as well as public access. To go through some of my comments will be addressed in a response to these comments. As was mentioned, both Speedway Boulevard and State Avenue are in the Sidewalk and Trails Master Plan as regional trails. So that's why those are 10-foot sidewalks. Although Talladega Drive is a private road, sort of the character of this part of the Speedway is transforming. And so we think it needs to transform as well. We would still recommend a 5-foot sidewalk along Talladega Drive. We have lots of sidewalks and streets that cross over driveways to industrial sites or others. So I wouldn't necessarily call it an exceptionally danger outside of any other driveway in an industrial district that we have. So that's one point that we're willing to consider moving forward. In regards to number 9, if you look at that,
Gunnar, excuse me, before you go further, can we, since we have so many to talk about, can I just go ahead and ask for questions from the commissioners on each specific point with regard? So how about we start off with the sidewalk on Talladega? Anybody have any questions? And I guess I might have one. If it's a private road, is there going to be access from the public? I mean, are we building a sidewalk to nowhere if nobody's going to have access to it? Or
I mean, you could make that argument for any parcel that's developed on a greenfield site. And so we see it as a continuation of future development. I mean, Talladega is a private drive built to public standards. It's not closed, even though it's technically private. The only thing that makes it private is that it is maintained by the Speedway. And so in that sense, it's still used as a public road, mostly during speed events, because there's no reason to go down it unless you're going to the Speedway. So that's granted, but, as we understand it, the Speedway sees future development of these outer parcels. And so we would want to see them develop to the standards that we would expect of a facility of this type.
I mean, at the time the Speedway was built, was there not such a requirement to have sidewalks? I mean, because there are no sidewalks around any of the perimeter of Kansas Speedway now. So was that agreement put into place or was that requirement put into place later?
It's the difference between an agricultural zone and a entertainment use, i.e. parking for the Speedway versus a 24/7 operation.
And are there sidewalks along the outer, I don't know what the road is on the outer side of the Speedway where Hollywood Casino is?
I got it up right now. Let me double check.
Because I don't believe that there
I
is.
don't believe that there is. From the aerial I'm looking at, there's none at Hollywood Casino.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead, and that's my last question about that. I'm going to go ahead and go to Commissioner Mueller first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got more of a statement than anything else about all the stipulations. We do nothing but hammer the small individual when it comes to striping and bushes and these kind of things. And I have a real issue that when we get to certain sizes of these projects that we kind of gloss over a lot of fine details that we force everyone else to do. And I think there's a certain unfairness to it. And I don't know, I just kind of have issues with not making everyone do or follow basically the same guidelines. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Ernst.
My question would be on a private drive. Can you tell me anywhere else that we've required them to meet requirements that would normally be along a street we owned? It seems awkward to require that on a private drive, a road to nowhere, as Jeff said.
This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a private drive where this is similar, but again, I would say that this is not necessarily your every private drive. I mean, we're transforming, this is the beginning of, as we understand it at least, the transformation of some of these outer parcels for the Speedway, right? So when we built this road originally, when we did the agreement with the Speedway originally, we didn't think we were going to build a 1 million+ square feet distribution center that was going to be open 24/7 in this corner of the parcel. I mean, with Bonner Springs, with Bonner's Crossing across the street, with American Royal north of State, I mean, this is a rapidly changing intersection. It's not going to be a road to nowhere forever. These are the types of developments that spur other developments. And so our thinking is we want to promote the spirit of our sidewalk and trails master plan, which is an old plan, still valid and good, and we still use it, but it's still out of date in the sense that it never anticipated a project like this. So it never talked about Talladega Drive specifically. But in the spirit of that, we want to promote walkability. And granted, to Urban's credit, you know, they worked with us. They built that internal walkway for their employees, which we thought was a great benefit to employees, right? So we don't think this is outside of the spirit of that either.
Okay. Commissioner Miller, I saw your hand up. Was that not?
I lowered it, but I'll make the statement anyways. All I was gonna do is make it. I don't remember, this may be Chairman Carson, you may remember better than me, but it was kind of bouncing off of Commissioner Ernst, but if I remember correctly, a couple years ago, maybe it was a year ago, we did a subdivision in Piper where we harped on kind of a sidewalk like this. And if I remember correctly, we left it in because there was talk of a school going in possibly in a few years. And there was some talk like that. And so I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I kind of feel like we've done this before because it's an area that is going to be developed, in my opinion. I don't think Urban Outfitters is going to be the only thing there. And why build the sidewalk after the fact if we can just connect them in?
Thank you. Okay, Gunnar, you want to go ahead and continue on with the other remaining 6 items, please?
Sure, and I'll just add, I just got a text. North 110th Terrace along the Auto Plaza dealerships, those are private drives with sidewalks. So it's not technically unprecedented.
All right, thank you.
The next one was number 9. I'll admit that this one actually looks like it got cut off. If you look into the staff report, essentially what we've been doing is we've been pulling everything that used to be just embedded in the back and forth in the staff report and doing a summary of conditions at the end to make it easier. So in that cut and paste job, we actually missed a sentence for number 9, but it's still in the staff report. So therefore it's still, by adopting the entire staff report, a part of our conditions of approval. We're actually asking that all of the proposed chain link fence that was described by the applicant be wrought iron in this, which is the same fence application of the speedway, whether it's visible from the street or not. And so that would be what we would recommend for that item. If you guys wanted to talk about that one anymore.
Anyone have any questions on that specific item? Go ahead.
I was going to say, at the right time, obviously I defer to you. I would, because there was a misunderstanding on the point. When you tell me to, I'd like to speak to that briefly.
Okay, that's fine, Mr. Peterson. I'll write that down.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions on that item? Seeing none, go ahead and continue, Gunnar.
For number 10, this was the one that was related to that the berms be reviewed at DRC. I mean, that's language that's basically calling out our standard protocol. When it goes to DRC, we're going to review the berms and what they look like to this approval, if it does get approved tonight, anyway. So I think this is more of a reinforcement than it is anything that is new and above and beyond what we typically do.
Okay. Questions on the berms? Okay, seeing none. Number 13, plants.
Yeah, number 13 is also related to number 12. If you read number 12, we do ask that native grasses be implemented throughout the landscape plan as much as possible. I'm not sure if Mr. Peterson missed that or didn't want to, if that one was okay with them or not. For the wildflowers one, again, because if you look at the factors to be considered, I believe it's in the plat reviews, there's a factor that discusses sort of maintaining the topography and natural character of the site. And as the site is essentially a cleared field, we thought it would be nice to do some clearing of the fields. I will admit that yes, wildflowers do take time and effort and therefore money to get to look like a real wildflower patch. But we were just kind of looking to what was going on in I-70 and around in the parking areas, and there is an opportunity for some wildflowers out there as well. And so we just thought it would be a good opportunity to meet sort of the natural character of the site and retain that, whether that gets potentially integrated into some of the other landscaping, or if we could focus more on native grasses in some of the other areas as opposed to just turf. That would be our preference. The note I would make is, although this is within our current zoning code, our future zoning code is looking to provide greater options like native planting and wildflowers as an option moving forward. So we're open on that one.
Okay. Questions on wildflowers? Okay, go ahead.
Number 17, I think of, again, part of this is, it's sort of two parts. Number 17 talks about both the landscaping and the trash enclosure. So trash enclosure, if there's no trash enclosure, then there's no trash enclosure. A trash compactor, as I understood the site plan and what Mr. Peterson said, was that they're already fully enclosed, and if they're already fully enclosed, then it is what it is, right? So usually we ask them that they build a wall around the trash compactor, and that matches the same material as the primary structure. I think that's what is moving forward. In regards to the landscaping, if they took issue specifically to the landscaping requirement as designed by the commercial design guidelines, I think that we would be amenable to adjusting how we do that edge condition with them in the landscape plan. The reason I would focus on sort of reviewing that, one, commercial design guidelines are technically the planning commission's to amend if they see fit. And then two, this was kind of one of those hybrid approaches. So we took a similar approach to what we did north of state with American Royal, which was some parts of it were very commercial in nature, and some of them weren't. And so we sort of did a hybrid application of commercial design guidelines. And so for this, similarly on this side of state, we tried to apply the commercial design guidelines as they were relevant to the office portion. So really we focused in on the employee parking lot, and the applicant did change their design for the employee parking lot to match what the requirements of the commercial design guidelines. So I think we're making the right, we're all heading in the right direction here. And so I think we would want to look at their landscape plan, but I don't think we'd have a problem with making that small adjustment.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
Not seeing any.
Number 18, that is the standard condition for BPU. That's what BPU wants. That's what we want. We understand that that's kind of far away from any future use or current use, excuse me. But these are the sort of back of house items that we look to shield on a continuous basis. So typically when these are in parking areas, we'll ask them to be landscaped. If they're not landscaped, we'd like to see some sort of fencing.
And just for clarification for the commissioners, we're talking about transformers and mechanical equipment screening, correct?
This one is specific to the BPU transformers.
Okay.
So we would ask that one stay, essentially.
Okay. Questions on that one? I do have a question. Commissioner Jones.
And Mr. Chairman, my question to you, Gunnar, is really more a comment that this was a good one to bring it up on as we talk about this. Going back to what Commissioner Mueller was saying, I understand exactly what he's talking about, and so it doesn't come across that we are exercising perhaps latitude with big business and being more nitpicky on small business, or there's somehow being a level of inequity. It made me think about this one, because I think when Mr. Peterson was giving his presentation, he talked about maybe getting consideration on this one for doing something different, because as I recall, the line of sight was going to be like the closest line of sight was going to be about a quarter of a mile, as I recalled. And so, but it sounds like, Gunnar, you said that this is a BPU rule, and using that one as an example, there's no latitude. Because my point in being, when we exercise some latitude or consideration, it shouldn't have anything to do with whether it's big or small business, but what the circumstance involved is. One, can exercise and consideration be given? And two, what is the reason for which it's being given? So my point is, as we give consideration on things, again, this is a bigger project, that we have valid reason for giving consideration, and there's not some inequity created just because of the size of the business.
Any response, Gunnar or Ms. Jones? Is there a need for a response, or is it just a statement?
The statement, but I thought it was a statement that I wanted to make somewhat sort of what Commissioner Mueller was saying with
Correct.
regard to when the decision and how the decision is made to give latitude and consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you also address, Gunnar, the mechanical equipment screening?
Yes, so that's number 20. Again, this is another standard condition that we have on all of these types of projects. I think this one is I would say this one is of particular concern. We always want to screen mechanical. This is very similar to the BPU one. In particular, we want to make sure that we are screening all of the mechanical that would potentially be on the roof. Not just on the ground. I think this was directed mostly to on the ground, but inevitably there's some stuff on the roof. And again, because of the berming, because of the screening, essentially all you're going to see from state or speedway is the roof. So you're going to see a roof with screens or a roof with mechanical on top. And we apply this pretty fairly across a lot of different types and uses and requests. So And I think just, I guess, if I may, my last sort of statement here would be, again, this is a significant change from the original intent of this site, which is fine. But we felt the application of these conditions are what would are what it would take to take our recommendation for approval. So with all of these, we still recommend approval of this project. Granted, it's a significant change, but we think we've worked with and received a lot of these conditions with the applicant. So.
Okay. Further questions of staff? I have one for legal counsel, and going back to sorry, there's Patrick. Going back to the sidewalks on Talladega being on a private road like that, where is the liability on that if something happens on those sidewalks or on a private drive or a private road like that? Does it fall onto the speedway? Does it fall on to the urban outfitters?
Well, I can only give you my experience. I'm sorry, Patrick Waters, legal department. Based on my experience with the unified government, a lot of it depends on what the condition of the sidewalk is at the time, how it was maintained and cared for. So it's really kind of fact dependent. Was there snow and ice on it? Was it maintained? And so I guess in a broad view, if it's on private property, you generally look to the owner, but there's always circumstances where the person themselves may have contributed to a fall or something like that. So it's really kind of a fact dependent situation.
Okay, but going back to the ones that border along State Avenue in the public right of way, is that a UJ responsibility?
So typically the owners of the abutting sidewalks are responsible for maintenance and maintaining those sidewalks free and clear of ice and snow. So it kind of just depends on what the exact situation is in terms of.
So depending on the situation, there could be more liability on behalf of either the Speedway or Urban Outfitters on the private sidewalk abutting Talladega than there would be in the public right of way on State Avenue.
Yeah, I mean, you always have issues when something's in a public right of way. There's always typically a little bit more of a governmental function there, but it's just tough to say. There's a lot of things that can happen.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Connolly, you're
all right.
There you go.
I was having a little problem. This is for Gunther. Hey, Gunther. So my understanding is with the 7 changes, you're open on 12 and 17. Is that correct? And the rest of them, you kind of stood fast on? I can't hear you, Gunther.
Sorry. Yeah, for 17, it would be the Planning Commission's decision whether they wanted to adjust their application of the commercial design guidelines and how they did landscaping. I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. So again, they've been compliant to the vast majority of commercial design guidelines as it relates to parking lot design. So I think that one's fine. And then the other one was technically 13 in related to wildflowers. I mean, if the applicant's willing to keep number 12, I mean, we would like to see native plantings in those same areas. If wildflowers is a bridge too far or a weed too deep, if you will, then I think we could live with that one too. But again, all in all, we think we've been working well with the applicant. We believe that we through this process and with these conditions make the project better, and so we're going to stick by the rest of them. I would also note number 20 is a code requirement. So if they wanted to not screen mechanical equipment, they'd have to get a variance.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? Mr. Peterson, you asked to make a comment and which is kind of not normally within the order, but I'm going to go ahead and allow you a little bit of latitude in a couple of minutes.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. I think we're talking about, at least in our numbering, it was number 2 of 7, which is stipulation 9 about wrought iron. And sometimes it's hard to sometimes follow in staff's comments because we end up with stipulations, but then there's some stray comments back before. So that was a misunderstanding. We absolutely believe that the right material here for this fencing is the black vinyl coated. This is not, I hope you've seen, this is not a cost issue for Urban. That is absolutely not, should not enter your mind a cost. It is a quality issue for the long term, for the circumstance. These fences, as we showed on the screen previously, are internal to the site, down where they are not viewable, other than we pointed out some small viewed triangle distant areas when you're down kind of south of Talladega on Speedway. But for the vast majority, there is zero visibility whatsoever. And it's all a truck traffic environment. And we think for the long term, whether it's wrought iron, I can't imagine it's actually wrought iron, but wrought iron, aluminum with pilasters and all that, for in a truck environment for decade after decade, the black vinyl coated is going to fare way better than the maintenance that will be needed with whether it's wrought iron or some wrought iron lookalike with masonry. It's just so it's just not, we feel like, I'm respectfully saying this, just realistic for the environment, an unseen trucking environment. And it's just not what's right for the best long-term, maintenance and look and for this environment. So thank you for letting me speak to that.
All right, thank you. Final questions for staff. Seeing none, I will stand for some motions. The first one would be on the master plan amendment.
Motion to approve the master plan amendment, subject to staff comments and stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve the master plan amendment made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Discussion on the master plan amendment. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the master plan amendment passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. Stand for a motion on the change of zone.
Motion to approve the change of zone, subject to staff comments and stipulations.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion to approve change of zone made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Armstrong. Discussion on motion to approve change of zone. Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
I'm sorry? Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear his vote.
Commissioner Reasons. There you go. It was aye.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval, subject to the staff's conditions, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. And finally, on the final plat, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the preliminary plat or final plat?
It's preliminary.
Preliminary, excuse me. Thank you.
That's okay. You're welcome. Preliminary plat, subject to staff comments and stipulations.
Second.
Motion for approval made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion on preliminary plat approval? Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller, Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the preliminary plat, subject to the staff's conditions, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. These will all be heard again on October 29th at 7 p.m. before the Board of Commissioners.
Thank
I
you.
wish you all well on getting things worked out and then working with the planning staff on getting together a plan that everybody in the community can be proud of. This is a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Our next application is special use permit. Mr. Chairman, can you tell me, what?
2020-85.
SP-2020-85 for Jason T. Hussey. Special use permit for an earthen fill at 732 North 57th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo, and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
No.
Mr. Hussey or your representative, could you please raise your right hand so I could unmute you? Okay, I've got Jason. Jason, could you go ahead and give us your name and address, please, and tell us about this project?
Yes, it's Jason Hussey, 732 North 57th Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just I've got a low area in my property that's just kind of also difficult to maintain, and I just like to fill that in and level it out, just make it more usable.
Any questions for the applicant? Excuse me. Commissioner Ernst.
Is this in any way affiliated with right to the north of you?
No, it's not.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in attendance that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Anyone in the public, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll go to Director Hand for staff comment.
Hey, Mr. Chair, Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. Again, this is a pretty straightforward application for some fill on the land. It's their applicants requesting approximately 3,800 cubic yards over 1.2 acres. There is a creek on the property, so we look through it with engineering as well as conservation district and apply some best practices to erosion control during the fill. And it's a little interesting because this is actually it's a project more than is a use, although it requires a special use permit. But staff recommends approval. We're giving them a year to complete the project, so it would be a 1-year SUP to get the job done.
Questions for Director Hand? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Cho?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Moeller?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion.
Connolly.
Did we get Commissioner Connolly?
Oh, Mr. Conley, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Conley?
okay. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit subject to the staff's conditions passes. 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on October 29th at 7 p.m. before the Board of County Commissioners.
Our next special use permit is SP-2020-87, Gary C. Phillips. Special use permit for the temporary use of land for a modular classroom for Emmy Pearson Elementary School at 310 North 11th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo, and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips, please give us your name and address for the record, please, and tell us about your project.
I'm Gary Phillips with ACI Boland Architects. Our address is 16605 West 146th Terrace in Olathe, Kansas. Basically, we're relocating in an existing modular classroom unit that's being demolished from the demolished William Allen White Elementary School. And we're relocating it to a spot where there previously was a modular classroom that was demolished. And then we're building a deck and a ramp, and we're reskinning the outside of the trailer with rigid insulation and sheeting or siding, and we're putting a new roof on it to meet the International Energy Code. We're reconnecting to existing utilities that are in place already. And that's about it.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone here tonight that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting and go to Director Hand for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. So for this one, there were just a couple of things we wanted to make sure we touch base on, and that was that some of the conditions we were going to apply is that it's painted to match the primary structure, that all lighting is directed downwards as per our sort of lighting standards. And then just a quick clarifying question, it is a replacement of the existing one. The current one that's on the property is being removed. Is that correct, Mr. Phillips?
The current trailer has already, the modular classroom unit's already been removed. It was demolished, I believe, 2 years ago. And this is just replacing, that's the picture that you've got on your screen is actually the old one that's been demolished. That's similar to what the new one will look like. The ramping and the deck is just slightly different.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Again, this is Gunnar Hand. And then as a part of that, I think it's important for the record, so the previous modular classroom did not have an SUP. So this is not a renewal, it is a new SUP, and we're recommending approval for 2 years.
I believe that's correct.
All right. Thank you, sir. Questions for Director Hand? I'm not seeing any, so I will stand for a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments and stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Armstrong. Discussion on motion to approve. Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Moeller?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit subject to the staff's conditions passes. 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on October 29th at 7 p.m. before the Board of County Commissioners.
Our next application is Alley Vacation A-2020-11. Scott and Rebecca Johnson. Vacation of an alley at 1041 Berger Avenue, 1044 McAlpine Avenue, and 522, 523, and 525 South 11th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, The staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo, and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
No.
Thank you. Scott or Rebecca Johnson, are you available? If so, if you'd raise your right, or your representative, if you'd please raise your hand. There you go. Go ahead and give us your name and address, please, for the record, and tell us about your project. I can now. Thank you.
Okay. This is Scott and Rebecca Johnson with Skodro's Property Management. We are at 20103 Knoll Avenue in Stillwell, Kansas. And we have submitted an application to vacate the alley between our two properties at 1041 Berger Street and 521 South 11th Street.
And can you go ahead and describe just what the purpose is for the vacation of the alley, of the easement?
Yes, as of right now, it is completely overgrown with trees and people go back there and dump trash and rubbish and whatnot. And then also since it's overgrown with trees, they drive, people to get through there, they drive along the corner of our property at 1041 Berger.
And so if the easement's approved, what's going to change about it? How is that going to change? What are your plans to do with the property if this were to be approved this evening?
As of right now, we are just going to put up a fence to keep people from going through there and putting up trash.
We're going to have a matching fence that matches our other property and close the whole thing with a 20-foot rolling gate that matches the other property. So full access to the property.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add?
No. Oh.
We will also be cleaning, if approved, we'll move all those trees and clear that. So it's all the trash and all the rubbish and everything's all cleaned up.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the applicant? Not seeing any. We'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone here tonight that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? I'm not seeing anyone from the public that wants to speak, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting, go to Director Hand for comment.
Hey, Mr. Chair, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. As the applicant mentioned, this is for the vacation of a leg. I'll show it to you again here. A leg of what is called a T alley in an old industrial area in the Armourdale neighborhood. There is currently a sanitary sewer line that goes down that portion of the alley. And so Public Works Water Pollution Control has requested that this be denied. And that would be our recommendation.
Questions for Director Hand?
Chairman Carson, I do.
Thank you.
Is that simply, I guess my question on that one is that so that they can get back there and work on that sewer line, or what's the purpose of that?
Yes, their recommendation is they wouldn't want someone to improve the property on top of them or gate it off so that they can maintain access to the full sewer line. It goes all the way through that alleyway.
I don't know how the rest of the commission will vote on this, but I'm just gonna make a little bit of a statement because I've been trying to help a homeowner on something with the city for a while, like a couple years now, on a vacated alley like this, and they can't get any. I mean, it's the city's alley, and when we can't get anybody back there, it's almost easier for these homeowners to vacate the alley so that they can maintain it. If an alley was split in my property, I wouldn't want people coming back there dumping. Just kind of my statement on it, but I just wanted to make that known.
Thank you. Commissioner Connolly?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Miller. I mean, I guess with their request, could we ensure that they maintain that alley to where they're keeping the dump and the trees cut back?
Is this a question for Director Hand?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Again, in clearing that property, we would want to not have them do that work. Yes, it's overgrown, but there's sanitary sewer lines underneath that we wouldn't want them to disturb. So neither do we want someone to necessarily fence it off or pave over it or extend their business across it. So there are situations where we've vacated public rights of way and maintained the easement. So in previous cases, that would not include having a fence block it off, because we wanted to maintain the right to re-enter that property as we see fit. Nor would we want them to mess around with any trees and roots, because that could potentially break a sewer line. So I understand the frustration, as well as the maintenance of, in particular, some of these older alleyways. And it is a pronounced issue even in the Armourdale neighborhood, right? Older industrial areas in general. So, I mean, you look at the pictures. I mean, it doesn't look like it's public right away. It's certainly not maintained, and it's not even asphalt, right? So I get it. But there is a utility under there that's currently in use, and Public Works has asked us to not support this vacation.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jones.
I guess I still, so if they got a key to the gate and didn't cut the trees back, would that be okay? I mean, somebody's dumping trash here. I mean, it's next to their property.
Yep. And we should do the best that we can to clean up that trash and maintain that alleyway. But I mean, I don't know if we have someone from Public Works on the call right now. We do.
Is Martin available?
Martin's on the call, but Sarah White from Public Works is also on the call if they want to try to respond to this. But again, it's when there's an active easement, when there's an active utility in the public right of way, we want to maintain control of it now and into the future.
Can I get a comment from either Martin or Sarah with Martin Tangira or Sarah White with Public Works?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so, one of Public Works' stance is that if we do have active utilities, we prefer not to vacate the right of way due to needing to get to that utility to maintain or repair.
All right, thank you. That was Sarah White with Public Works. Commissioner Conley, anything else?
I apologize. Sorry.
Sarah, so if they put a fence up and they gave you a key, that wouldn't work?
Well, right now, what Public Works stance is that if we already have right of way, we prefer to keep it as right of way.
Now, can I ask, would Public Works make sure that it stayed clean from the trash that's getting dumped back here?
I will say that is something that should be, an item that should be maintained if it is right away. So that will be, I will report that. And I do know that a lot of these, especially if they're not active roads, we do have some in the county that are overlooked and need to be added back onto the maintenance list or their list that they check and make sure that that it's getting cleaned up, trees cut, etc.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
So I part of my question was already answered, but it was in line with what Commissioner Connolly was asking about. So just had we had that situation before, and Sarah, what you're saying is if it went back on a maintenance list, then this would be a property that's checked routinely on some sort of frequency?
Yes, so all of our right-of-way is kept on a list, and it would then be treated just like every other street, alleyway, etc. So that one would just need to, I will send an email this evening to our street department to make sure they go out and take a look at this and make sure it gets added to the list.
And just, yeah, because I do, and I think it sounds like certainly Commissioner Connolly agrees. This is somewhat of a quandary because the petitioner's trying to do the right thing. We get, why it's being denied, but just looking for some other compromise or solution. And the other thought that I have is that I know sometimes signage doesn't help maybe, or maybe it does. And so could perhaps some signs be put up about no dumping penalty or something to help, discourage people from dumping on their property or in this alley that they want vacated.
Yes, I will request that as well. We do have no dumping signs and those kind of things that they can put up.
And
Thank
this
you.
Is,
Thank you.
This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. Just as a point of clarification, the alley is 15 feet wide. So again, some of these pictures could potentially be misleading. This is the applicant's property. The alleyway is, approximately somewhere around here. So I'm not saying it's not overgrown. It definitely is, and it's definitely not maintained. But a lot of this is the applicant's property growing into the alleyway as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Reasons?
Yeah, first off, I know this is one of those things that I guess the big question I'm asking myself is, why is this coming before us if this is something that is already set out there, that if there's any type of utilities run underneath, that we're not going to vacate lots. So I guess, Gunnar, that my first question would be is, why are we even discussing this? And second off, to the people, our office is right off at 10th and Faree, and we have an alleyway, and it's a dumping place every single week. But I will say our staff here at Wyandotte, if we just make a phone call, they are always out there to clean it up. But us as citizens have to make that phone call first, not, hey, we want this land just so we can keep control of it. And when I see the picture here, yeah, it doesn't look like their side of the yard's even cleaned up yet either. So, but I guess my main question is, Gunnar, is how come we don't just have this as a standing policy that if it's that, it's not coming before the planning and zoning because there's utilities under it?
It's a good question. I think that not every alleyway has active utilities. And because it's a vacation application, when we do our cursory review, we walk through these issues with them and what could arise. And so I think that they're aware of what could come out of vacation. And I think that we've demonstrated certainly in the last 6 months that generally speaking, these types of vacations of public right-of-way, platted streets and alleyways are generally something that we try to preserve as a county. We've had multiple cases like this in the past. So I think to answer your question, I can work with my staff and do a better job in pre-apps so we can potentially weed some of these out to let them understand both our stance, but also the risk of the application. But at the end of the day, if they want to continue to apply and take it to the Planning Commission, that's what we got to let them do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
I guess mine's kind of a follow-up question, Gunnar, when you were talking about the trees and stuff and on their property. And I understand all that. And looking at these pictures, if an alley's not as overgrown, you won't see as much dumping, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, we just said that we want to deny this because we don't want them to cut down trees and mess with the roots that are going around this water line. Why if these people want the trees cut down and the city wants to maintain the alley, why don't we get the city in there to cut the trees down and clean up the alley? I mean, it's our alley and it looks terrible.
We know that.
This is Dr. Hanna. Again, I don't know if I misspoke earlier or not, but we would agree that the city needs to get in here and clean up the alleyway at the very bare minimum. We would want the city to do that work and potentially damage that sanitary sewer line, not an applicant, because then we'd make them, fix it if they accidentally broke it, and it could turn into a whole mess in and of itself. So
I kind of just as a question follow up to that. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Gunnar, but can we hold over a vacation, give the city 30 days to see how badly they want to clean up this alley themselves? Or is that out of line? I don't know. I've never held over a vacation before.
I mean, you guys can hold over any application you so choose based on any reason that you determine is valid. I think, I don't know if it would change our stance nor the water pollution stance, because it doesn't change the fact that there's a active sanitary sewer line underneath the alley. And it's not like it's just that portion of the alley, right? It's the entire T. And this is one of those worst case scenario alleys in Armadale, right? It's a T intersection, which is a T alleyway, which is common in industrial blocks. This one is completely overgrown. If you recall, a couple of months ago, we had a very similar application where someone had already fenced over an alley because they didn't know it was an alley. And so we made them take down that fence because we had to maintain those utilities in that other alleyway. And that became a whole enforcement case in and of itself. If you look at an aerial of this property, I mean, the entire east-west portion of the alleyway is overgrown as well. But underneath all of that is a sanitary sewer line that's active. And that's basically what we're resting our hat on.
I'm going to go back to Public Works. Sarah, I mean, you're going to make the request. There's no reason that the request would not be granted and they're not going to send somebody out there to clean this up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, it's our responsibility. You're going to make that request and it's going to get handled. So there's really no need to hold something over to see if they're going to do it, because they are going to do it. Correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Moeller, you had your hand up, but I don't see it up now.
Yes, I'm leaning towards Commissioner Connolly and the gate with the lock. I hate to say this, but I don't exactly trust the unified government to come out and clean that or any other alley. I've seen too much. So if I were to make a motion to deny, would that be to deny the denial, or would I make a motion to, how would I make the motion? If you were going to approve the application, you would make a motion to approve the application. The request that's being made is to do it. The recommendation from staff is to deny. Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jones.
So Gunnar, I'm just wondering, in similar situations, correct me if I'm wrong, but from your perspective, if we had a similar case going forward, your recommendation would be the same, in that if utilities were involved, the city does not want to give up its right-of-way, period, correct?
This is Gunnar, that's correct.
And we don't have any precedent that you know of, because I also understand what Commissioner Connolly is saying. On one hand, that seems to kind of satisfy both things, but you know, if we started doing this across the board, the city keeping up with keys to gates, making sure that we stayed consistent, would probably also present an issue as well. Sarah, do you know of any other situation where we have keys to, you know, because I can see where that might be a little problematic. It would resolve this, but long-term, what we do for one, we might contemplate doing for others, and then the city ends up with multiple keys. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are places that we have access to, you know, some pump stations or CSOs or utilities. The reason we don't prefer that is because if this becomes an easement instead of right of way, then if we need to go on to the easement to do a fix or maintenance or whatever, then there are things that, you know, if we have to take down a fence to get to our utility, then we have to replace the fence. So there becomes an expense. So that is something that I know that the direction of our water pollution control is that if we have right of way with utilities on that, we want to preserve those. We've also have instances where, you know, just because there's an easement over a utility, there's not really, unless you have that permanently marked on your graph that there is a utility there, there could be, you know, there's instances of people putting a shed over the the utility. And so if there's a repair that has to happen in the future, then we have to remove the shed and, you know, have issues with that and the cost for that. So that is just their stance right now. I do know that not all right of way has utilities in it. So not all alleys have utilities. So that's why, you know, a vacation of those kind of things could occur because there's not active utilities.
And then if I could just ask one more thing to Commissioner Muller's point about his concern about whether or not the UG would be able to keep up with keeping this cleared. When you mentioned earlier, Sarah, about it going on a maintenance list, are those properties checked with regularity, or does the UG have problems keeping up with them and maintaining them?
There is a list of our active, you know, our alleys and these kind of right-of-way situations that do get checked. I don't know right now what that reoccurrence would be, but they have them on different schedules. I will say that a lot of times, you know, the dumping, the illegal dumping that happens, you know, that's something that someone will need to report that if it happens during the time that in between the times that they check. We don't have the resources to drive every alleyway every day to see those kind of dumping. So it does take a call from the public, or, you know, logging on to the MyWICO app and reporting issues like that. But a lot of the, you know, the clearing of trees and weed maintenance, those kind of things are done on a routine basis.
Does that satisfy your question, Commissioner Jones?
It does. And my only other thing that maybe Gunnar can get to is whether or not any of this was offered to the applicant at all when we realized there was a utility there in terms of options as opposed to the vacation.
I'd have to talk to my staff person who led the case, but I do not believe so. I think this was pretty cut and dry for us. So no, I don't think that we talked through any clearance issues with them. Again, I think for me, you know, we talked about a couple of precedents in terms of maintaining alleyways. We've had a couple of cases in front of us over the last 6 months where gated public rights of way have been an issue. And now we're proposing a gated public right of way. So I know that it's a strained alleyway in a you know, a remote spot behind a train yard in Armourdale, but I would highly recommend against fencing this off, gating this off, and giving us a key. That is not the solution here, in my opinion.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go back to Sarah White. Just a quick question for you. If the alley was vacated, could the area be improved with, you know, hard surface, you know, whether it be asphalt or concrete? And then again, if there had to be work done to the sanitary sewer, would the unified government then be required to repair it back to its condition if there was just an easement? I mean, you mentioned they'd have to put the gate back up or the fence back up. If there were other improvements done that were damaged in the repair of the item there, that would then require additional expense on behalf of the unified government to put it back.
Well, it depends. Usually, if we have an easement, we don't allow for an improvement to happen over it, such as a shed or, I mean.
And then if one is done without going through the proper channels, then the property owners created their own hardship, and we wouldn't be required to take care of it anyway, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Connolly.
Okay, first of all, I believe when Sarah says she's going to do something, she's going to do it. And but I guess with Gunther, I mean, I don't know what the application fee was, but it seemed like that staff would have told them a little bit about this. Because I mean, as a commission, I feel like, hey, I really don't have a choice but to deny this. And kind of what Commissioner Reason was saying, I mean, why is it coming before us? And they played an application fee, assuming that they had some type of a chance to do this. But like I said, I trust Sarah that she'll make it happen. And I hope the applicants are happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller.
Mine is kind of a follow-up to Commissioner Conley, because I was going to mention the application fee too. I don't know how many others will be in favor of this as well, but I'm kind of with Commissioner Moeller, because I've seen these situations arise and we wait 3-6 months on an alley or something like this. And so in my opinion, I'd be in favor of a 30 or a 60-day holdover. These people paid their money. They paid to be heard. They paid to have a hearing. We may say that our hands are tied and can't vacate it, but let's at least make the UG clean it up. I mean, let's at least hold them accountable and say, you've got 30 to 60 days to clean it up. And if not, we'll vacate the alley. Because it's what should be done.
So you want to bring everybody back in 30 days to discuss this again if it's all been taken care of, and make the applicant come back as well?
I'll make a motion that it's on the consent agenda for denial if it has to. So then it doesn't have to, but I just want to make sure it gets cleaned. I had a 75-year-old woman a month ago wait 3 weeks for the BPU and the UG to show up on an alley that looks just like this in her backyard, and they never showed up. So she paid to cut her own tree down. That's my point on this. We let these things happen. The UG needs to be held accountable on them.
Are there questions or comments for staff?
Mr. Chair, a vacation application for industrial property or commercially zoned property is $300.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Hang on. Commissioner Jones.
Gunnar, I just want to, given the discussion, do you have any response to that, or perhaps a better idea, or do you agree with Commissioner Miller, given the circumstances that have existed before?
This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. I guess for me, it goes back to the application that we had on the other side of this alleyway a couple of months ago, where the applicant was trying to cross the alleyway and combine two parcels, except they were trying to cross the east-west portion. They had already gated that portion, and then we told them to take down the fence. And now we're saying potentially we're going to add a fence. So I think we need some consistency, and I'm not saying anyone's at fault at that. I think the UG family needs consistency on this issue, and it's potentially a conversation bigger than this, but where we have been consistent is that on active utilities, we don't want to give up our public right of way.
May I offer a suggestion? I think part of where we're going, at least in my mind, where it's leading to, is that at least if, as a part of this whole process, when a petitioner, when an applicant comes, wants to potentially come before us, and it's discovered that utilities are on the property, and that we're not the UG, from their perspective, and I can understand totally why, given the conversation, are not going to want to vacate it. Can the petitioner somehow be told that in advance so that they don't pay that application fee, or they at least be given an opportunity to know, okay, generally these are denied. I guess if they wanted, they could pay it, but making sure that the applicant goes into this with their eyes wide open, that you may be paying for not, because generally we don't do that.
I don't want to misspeak here, but we do have a pre-application process that does just that. And so each request goes through a pre-application, whether we specifically in that pre-app looked at that layer and saw if the vacation had a utility, an active utility or not in it, I can't say, because sometimes the person who does the pre-app is not the person who does the staff report. But again, in our draft staff report and others, that's when we got the specific recommendation from Public Works. Over the last 6 months, we've generally, as staff, as planning staff, encouraged people to find other ways instead of a vacation. So we've been working to not have these types of vacations, but for one reason or another, this one made it through. As I said to Commissioner Reasons earlier, we can do a better job in our pre-apps moving forward.
Are we willing to refund the fee?
I'd have to talk to the planner who had the pre-app. If we gave them the caveat about vacations, I would not be inclined to refund them.
I would agree with that. I guess I was thinking, if we could get some confirmation, and maybe you don't know the answer to this question, but confirmation as to whether or not Scott and Rebecca Johnson were advised in advance of this potential dilemma.
Yeah, I can dig into that. I know that Byron reviewed the case, but I'm almost positive Byron did not do the pre-app. So I can figure out who did the pre-app tomorrow and we can dig into it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Yes, I just had one quick question. So typically if someone was to make a hotline call, what is the standard timeline for you guys to come out and clean that up?
Sarah, would you be able to answer that question? Or Martin?
So that goes to our street department. And I am not sure what the turnaround time is. I do know that we typically want to get back with the person, conversation, call them in 24 to 48 hours. I'm not sure what their backload is, but so I can't speak to that. But I do know that the street department definitely strives on public service and customer service, so they will get back with the person in 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, because I feel like with everyone's conversations that's going, I feel like that's kind of like the big concern here. I understand you said that you were gonna have this put on a monthly maintenance thing, but if someone was to make a hotline call, I just wanted to know the timeline for someone to come out, because Commissioner Miller was saying he had an example where it took 3 weeks for someone to come out. So, I'm just trying to see how that goes hand in hand with the month, the routine maintenance as well. So.
Right. Well, I will, I'm going to be putting in that request. We have a system where we can put in work orders. I'll put in that request and have someone come out in the next 48 hours to take a look at it and get it on the list. So it could happen, it could get cleaned up immediately. I am not in that department, but I will put in that request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I want to just go quickly to legal counsel. Patrick, from a legal standpoint and needing immediate access, any feelings from the legal department regarding access to the property and keys and things like that?
Hi, Patrick Waters, legal department. My only concern with the gate idea, and I just don't know how we utilize it in other situations, but if there were to be some emergency there, a break in the line, we would need immediate access to that location. So I don't know if a key system is feasible or not, but anything that was done to restrict our access, we would just need to make sure that we really could get to there quickly in case something happened.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Reasons.
Is it too early to make a motion, or are we still need to discuss a few things?
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll stand for that motion. Commissioner Reasons.
Yes, I make a motion that we deny per staff stipulations.
Motion made for denial based on the staff recommendation and stipulations. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Jones. Discussion on motion for denial. Commissioner Conley.
Well, I going back to what Commissioner Jones said, do we have to put in the stipulation that they be reimbursed the application fee, or is that something that Gunner's going to do diligence on itself?
Gunner, can you provide some clarity on that? In the
Yeah,
event that we find
either way,
out,
I'll talk to the staff person who did the pre-app, and I'll refund or not based on that. I don't think it's tied to the approval or not.
All right, thanks.
thank you. Further discussion on motion for denial? Seeing none, roll call, please. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, Commissioner Mueller. Commissioner Mueller.
I'm sorry. As far as having access to the property in case of an emergency, I don't think you could have access to the property with the trees and the shrubbery in the condition that it's in. That was just a statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we go to roll call? All right, Secretary Parker, roll call, please.
Armstrong?
Nay.
I'm sorry?
Nay.
Oh, okay. Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
No.
Mueller?
No.
Reasons?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend denial of this vacation application for the reasons outlined in the staff report passes 5 in favor and 3 opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on October 29th at 7 p.m. before the Board of County Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, our next application is the one that we moved from the consent agenda over to the non-consent agenda. And that's Plan Review Application PR-2020-26, David Eichmann with Olson, preliminary and final plan review for a parking lot for storage trailers at 5900 Speaker Road. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated October 12, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file and the notices to property owners. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
No.
Is the applicant or representative in the audience? If you would, please raise your hand. Mr. Eichmann. Yes, please go ahead and give us your name and address, please, for the record, and tell us about your project.
Yeah, it's David Eichmann with Olson. Address is 1301 Burlington Street, North Kansas City. The project is just a parking lot storage facility for Riverside Transport. They're looking for about 200 stalls for trailers to be put at. The area to the west and east are pretty much the same way, and it's just looking for secured parking. So with that, I'd just be here for any questions.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Reasons?
Yes. Are you planning on asphalting or paving this whole area that you're wanting to park these trailers on?
Yes, asphalt with concrete locations for dolly, for the dolly supports.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that came to the meeting in order to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Please raise your hand. Seeing no comments from the public, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and go to Director Hand for a comment.
Hey, Mr. Chair, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Again, this is for storage and trailers. This is loosely associated with the an earlier plat that was in the consent agenda item. Essentially, that Hart Industrial Complex makes one parcel here, a second parcel here, and then there's a third common parcel here for a detention basin. Essentially, the design of the project is to make this portion of the project, that little bows out right here, their detention basin. The rest of it is a surface parking lot. We're asking that, not too dissimilar from Copart around the corner, we're asking that the applicant, as a condition of approval, do an architecturally screened and landscape buffer fence both along the northern boundary against the mobile home park residential neighborhood and along the Speaker Road public right of way, and then have another fencing on the east and west. The applicant noted that they will park cars 25 feet away from the street, which means it doesn't necessarily have to be screen fenced. But the language in the code and in the staff report note that if any of those vehicles are inoperable, which is not the proposed use, but things change. But if they were ever to convert into inoperable vehicles, it does have to have a fully screened fence. So that was just something we wanted to make sure was in there for future reference as needed. Additionally, there was a maintenance agreement that was placed on the plat as a part of this project that for the common maintenance of their drainage basin. So with that, we recommend approval.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments and stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moeller,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this plan review subject to the staff's conditions passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on October 29th, 7 p.m. before the Board of County Commissioners. And with that, we've had a request for a break. So I know we only have one item left on our agenda, but we will take a 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll return and hear the Central Avenue Master Plan update, and then we will conclude our agenda for this evening. So we'll take 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, 2-minute warning.
They've abandoned.
Okay.
There he is.
Yes, sir. I didn't want you to see me chewing, so that's why I took my video off for a second.
You know, I lost that restriction about an hour ago.
Mr. Chairman, I moved Jamie Granger over as a panelist
Okay.
and also made him a co-host so that he can share.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have everybody back? Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene the Planning Commission meeting, and Janet, if you'll make the last introduction, please.
Chairman, the last item that we have on our agenda tonight is the consideration of the Central Area Master Plan.
Thank you. Mr. Granger?
Hello, everyone.
You are on.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good to see you all again. Thanks for finding space within your tight agenda for me tonight. Just a quick reintroduction. My name is Jamie Granger, associate at Interface Studio. We're a planning and urban design firm based in Philadelphia and the lead consultant for the Central Area Master Plan. So we've been able to share a few iterations of the draft plan with you all the past couple of months. Hopefully you've been able to look at some or all of the plan, but hoping to spend tonight really just a refresh of some of the planning process and really share with you how things have evolved since the last time we met. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right, can you all see?
Yes.
Okay. All right, trying to make it full screen. Okay. So when we're talking about the central area, it's really just to reiterate the study area. It's just to the southwest of downtown, bounded by some major highway infrastructure, State Avenue to the north that really cuts away for the downtown area. When we started this planning process, it really started in earnest at the beginning of last summer. We're working towards spring completion. Obviously, things changed significantly in the spring, put the planning process on hold for a little bit, retooled, moved some of the engagement online. We didn't think it was appropriate to meet in person, so that took a little time, but we eventually developed a draft plan, which you all should have been able to take a look at. Just a little bit about our process. It's really community-driven and data-driven. So we try to learn as much from residents and constituents as possible, but also tee that up with a pretty in-depth analysis of data, looking at things like the census or on-the-ground field work. And really the combination of those two really gives us a really good understanding of the place. We can develop some vision and recommendations. Just a little bit more about the outreach. We tried to reach as many people as we could, and really in diverse different ways. We did this through individual interviews, numerous public events, went to neighborhood meetings, focus groups, and as I mentioned, we retooled some of the outreach to an online survey to really get some specific questions to finish up the plan. I will note that all the outreach was done bilingual in English and Spanish, really to try reach a diversity of residents as possible. Ultimately, what that led to is a vision for a strong community. It's something we've heard time and time again, just the value that people placed on that sense of community in the central area. We eventually developed 4 key goals to really help support that vision. The first being to empower residents to build community through shared neighborhood improvements. The second being to establish Central Avenue as a social, cultural, and employment center of the neighborhood. The third being to provide housing that's suitable for a range of life stage economic circumstances. And the fourth being design a mobility network that gives options and promotes a sense of community. So last time we met, we went through each one of these goals and specifically went through a lot of the action items associated with all of those. So I don't want to repeat what you heard from us a couple months ago, but really just want to share with you, how the plans evolved since we last met, and show you any additions to the plan. So the first is the future land use plan. So this is really a framework for development, really to ensure that a lot of the vision and goals through this planning process really bear out as the neighborhood changes. When looking, so this is an existing land use plan. You can see there's a variety of different uses throughout the central area. Kind of the overarching thing being that it's primarily a residential community. There's a variety of commercial corridors that stand out, but there's also high levels of vacancy. So when looking at future land use, it's really kind of an aspirational map. And this was, done in close coordination with the planning department. They used a specific methodology that they can speak to if any questions arise. But you can see it's much more simplified, but really, again, the overarching goal is to really maintain that residential fabric for the central area. You'll see that a lot of the commercial activities concentrated on some key corridors, places like Central, 10th, 7th, and Minnesota. You'll notice that there's no vacancy. Obviously, this is an aspirational plan, but really working to convert that vacancy to more productive use, either through new residential housing or commercial space or open space, really kind of fitting in with the context of the neighborhood. There's a few key development sites that we spoke to last time we met. The first being the large vacant lot on 7th and Central. We really see that as being a key development site to really build off of a lot of the work that's been done just to the east of it on Central. So thinking of that space as really kind of a mixed use place that can really help support that commercial corridor. The Bethany Park and Hospital site, thinking of that really as one singular site that can serve a variety of roles for the community through new housing and improved park space. And then also thinking about the Alcott Arts Center. There was some trepidation that came up with residents throughout the planning process about proposals for industrial type uses there. So we're really siding with the residents and kind of maintaining the historic and residential character of that space. As I mentioned, we went through specific action items, but we've really evolved the implementation piece of the plan since we last met. So we started to organize these into priority action items. So these are things that came up in the process that were very important that we thought needed to be implemented. Things that could really lay the groundwork for future implementation, or things that really need to happen right away, just based on current circumstances. So we've developed a series of 6 different categories where a lot of the action items fall. So the first being immediate COVID-19 response actions. So these are some actions that the unified government has already taken through legislation, allowing businesses the opportunity to use some of the adjacent outdoor space. A lot of cities have really had success at this, and it's really helped particularly restaurants kind of continue on and kind of hold out until the things change in the future, but also open streets opportunities, opportunities to convert residential streets, close it off to vehicular traffic, and allow safe space. So these are things that the UG is already working on that we're really kind of pushing to implement soon. One of the key action items within the plan is to build off La Placita as really the premier global food market in the region. And we think during COVID, there's an opportunity to really double down on La Placita as a safe place for businesses and residents to congregate. We also, through our online outreach, asked specifically how residents were impacted by COVID. And about 50% said their housing situation's been impacted in some way, and nearly 20% said they had difficulty paying for utilities. So the immediate housing implications are important. So one of the strategies that we outlined in the plan is to create a housing advocate for the central area, really someone that's completely devoted to housing, that can work with residents to work through some of the issues they're having now and kind of connect them with resources. The second priority action group is to build capacity with central area organizations. This is really an opportunity to lay the groundwork for future implementation. The first being building capacity at some of the neighborhood groups. There's a lot of neighborhood residents who are strongly committed to the community, invest a lot of their time, but that can only go so far with limited resources. So how do you bring as many residents into the process who are fully engaged that can help with implementation? So some of the action items we identified were things like identifying neighbors that can help cross cultural divides, organizing smaller scale events, really bringing as many people and residents to the process as possible. This can also play out in physical improvements throughout the neighborhood. Cities that really struggle to pay to improve either parks or maintain them, getting resident advocate groups who are really engaged around a specific thing, like a park, has shown to be successful. So you often hear about friends of groups or working within the UG program, Adopt a Spot. So it's really getting engaged residents to really have an invested interest in particular parks can lead to improvements. And then thinking about Central Avenue specifically as well, the Central Avenue Betterment Association is really the organization leading improvements to the corridor. And they do really great work bringing a lot of events and bringing people to the corridor. But it's really a capacity issue, and how can we help build capacity for CABA to really take a stronger role, similar to what corridor managers often do. Potential funding resources like bids or SIDs, or really finding what's appropriate for the central area is going to be important. The next action group is to make strategic improvements to the public realm. So there's an opportunity to make immediate changes to Clifton Park. The UG has already has some planned improvements around accessibility and amenities that are already in the works. So it's really kind of implementing that work that's already been done. There's also opportunity with this Stories on Stories mural project, which is planning to do a mural on the the abandoned bathhouse within Clifton Park. So kind of thinking of these two things together, can kind of double their impact, having both of them take place in the same space. We also think it's important to coordinate with the land bank on how to activate vacant lots, particularly lots that aren't really conducive to future development. These are things, right up against the highway or on steep slopes. What is the long-term solution for those properties that are within the land bank holdings? So it's really advocating for the beginning of those conversations to start. And also targeted code enforcement with assistance from resident advocate groups. Part of the survey and fieldwork that we did early on in the process was a block by block survey of the condition throughout the central area. Really classifying blocks as either kind of trending up through A through C or trending down through D through F. So really using that analysis as a framework to target some code enforcement throughout the neighborhood, all while doing it in close coordination with resident advocate groups who really have a good understanding of the on-the-ground conditions. The fourth action group is to lay the groundwork for Central Avenue to continue to thrive. You know, there have really been palpable investments in Central Avenue. COVID has impacted commercial corridors specifically across the country. So what kind of things can we get the wheels moving on that, you know, once things return back to normal, Central Avenue and businesses can really hit the ground running. The first is starting to think about the redesign of Central Avenue. We talked about this a little bit last time, but how can we, you know, reallocate some of that extra space within the street to have a better use for it, either through parking or pedestrian improvements, and really highlight the Central Avenue as a commercial corridor. And when asking residents where initial implementation piece could be, they identified 13th to 18th Street as really being the best place for that. There's also opportunities to create major gateways to the corridor. This is as you come over the bridge just onto Central Avenue, helping to really reinforce the diversity of the corridor with really a graphic representation, can really lay the groundwork for reinforcing identity for the Central Avenue corridor. So we identified this location as well as 18th and Central as another location where that can occur. And then finally, residents really expressed the importance of Bethany Park to the neighborhood, but also Central Avenue specifically. There's a variety of different interested parties between the park and the community center and the former Bethany Hospital site, really advocating that hopefully this planning process can begin conversations with all of those interested parties to make sure that, you know, everyone's voice is being heard in the outcome of this really important site for the central area. The next action item is really to work to keep housing affordable. So, you know, housing in the central area is affordable relative to nearby neighborhoods. And the first step is really to help to maintain the naturally occurring affordable housing that already exists, you know, keeping it in good repair, not allowing it to get to a state where it turns vacant and in turn gets torn down and rebuilt at a higher price. So really ensuring that, you know, this natural affordable housing that already exists stays there for residents. And when talking about new development, are there opportunities to really work within already existing UG programs to really keep any of that new development affordable? So working with places like, or organizations like the Land Bank and relationships with contractors, can we really streamline this process and make sure that any new development comes in at lower costs? But at the same time, building up relationships with organizations that have that are nonprofit organizations that are looking to build affordable housing as well. So it's really a two-pronged approach. And then also thinking about monitoring the costs for long-term homeowners. You know, this is probably a series of metrics that the UG can institute to see how housing costs are changing over time, and really seeing it eventually if there's a need to interject with such a program, using the Philadelphia Loop program as an example. It's been pretty successful in keeping long-term homeowners in neighborhoods that have seen gentrification, rising housing costs by capping property taxes to a certain amount. So, you know, not something that necessarily needs to be instituted right away, but it's going to be important to kind of monitor and see how housing costs are changing for residents. And then finally, the priority action item being to begin the transformation to a multimodal transit future. You know, the central area is a driving community, but there was a really strong desire by residents to begin to change that equation. So things like focused sidewalk improvements, residents said areas around schools should be prioritized. We outline a few suggestions within the master plan, and also thinking about redesigning some key intersections. The future land use plan identifies 10th and 7th as key commercial corridors. But if you are walking on 10th or 7th from Central Ave, you have to walk either half a mile or 3/4 of a mile before you get to an intersection, a pedestrian intersection. So, building off of the future vision, how can we start to make those corridors a little more pedestrian friendly? The master plan outlines a pretty robust bike network, but really where does that bike network begin? There's the existing lanes on 10th and Central. There are already plans in the works for a cycle track on 6th. So that's really a good place to start. But then building out the network from there on the western end of Central, and Minnesota particularly has a street width to implement bike infrastructure without really changing the street too much. And then finally, thinking about implementing the bike share stations that unified government's already working towards within the Central area at key locations, but at the same time improving transit experience, things like bus shelters. So thinking about Lally Park at 10th and Central, it's where the bike infrastructure currently crosses. It's also a place where multiple bus lines cross as well. So how can we really build off of a lot of these transit improvements in one particular place, in addition to some open space improvements to really have a big impact? So it was, a very quick rundown of where the plan's going. Hopefully, between opportunities to look at the draft plan that we've sent along and our previous conversations with you all, hopefully you have a good understanding of what is within the Central Area Master Plan, and happy to answer any questions or comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. First off, we have Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Connolly, go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
You said a lot about housing. It's a lot of low income housing there, public housing, HUD-based housing, all in that area. It's more in that area than any other area in the city.
Yeah, there are some housing authority properties within Central area.
It's some housing authority. It's some HUD. Section 232 housing. That's more in that area than any other area in the city. You don't think so?
Is the question, what is the exact question?
You talked a lot about, housing costs, and I'm just saying it's more in that area than any other area.
Yeah, there are housing authority properties, and then the general housing as well, just the single family housing stock. When we're talking about affordable housing, not necessarily meaning affordable from a housing authority perspective, but affordable from the market perspective as well. So we're kind of talking about it from both ends of that spectrum.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Jamie, as far as I know your project was compromised due to the pandemic, but how do you feel at the end of the day with the number of interviews you got? Do you feel they were representative? Were you disappointed with the input that you were able to get? What was the interview numbers were like 34 or something like that? Do you feel but for the pandemic, would that number have been a lot larger? Would there have been more community input? Do you think the project would have a different slant had there been more input, or do you think you got the essence of what the community wants along the Central Avenue corridor?
So I think the pandemic obviously had an impact on the outreach we did. I'm not necessarily sure we would have done more one-on-one interviews, just because that's very it takes a lot of time. And we had various public events. You know, we tried to reach people in a variety of different ways, reach them where they are, going to their neighborhood organizations. But, you know, that brings up a bigger topic, being that, you know, it is a very diverse neighborhood. I think within a lot of the neighborhood groups, they're probably not necessarily representative of the neighborhood at large. So we tried to target specific groups, particularly the Latino Hispanic community as well, working with CABA, going to the CABA events. We had a stand set up at the CABA parade, going to some of their board meetings, working with some of their organizations. Ultimately, you know, it's always a challenge to do public engagement in large immigrant populations. Ultimately, on the online survey that we did, I think close to a third of participants said they spoke some or only Spanish at home. So, you know, obviously that's not as high as, I think it's 50 or a little higher than 50% of the population. But we did feel pretty good about that, just knowing that it's, you know, specifically a tough portion of the population to meet. But all told, I think we got a very good representation of the issues from the community. And, you know, I'm not sure if things necessarily would have been different with the pandemic, or if the pandemic didn't happen. It was kind of at the tail end of the process. We got a lot of the larger picture ideas earlier on, and we were hoping to get a lot of the more specific questions that we needed answers, things about, you know, how do people prioritize Central Avenue, street sections, things like that, which are actually pretty conducive to an online format. So, you know, I don't think it necessarily would have changed the plan that much. With that said, I think there's always an opportunity where we could have reached more people and a more representative of the community as well.
Okay, thank you.
This is sorry. This is going to end our plan. Just to add on to that one, I would say we probably did more than we would have. As Mr. Granger mentioned, we were about to do our final meeting and call it a day, and then COVID hit, and so we spent those 4 months in that timeline where he grayed them off, where I basically went out and re-met with all of the neighborhood groups and made sure we were all still moving forward and on target. And so I think we kind of I'd like to think we went above and beyond, but I share his notion, as most planners do, is you can never do enough outreach.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Jones.
I just had a comment, and it parlays nicely, I think, into what Jamie said earlier and Gunnar just said, and that's, I think you all have done a commendable job, the leaders of this project, in terms of the community outreach efforts and inclusive of diversities too. And my question is, did I understand you right? The community outreach phase is done at this point.
That's correct, yes.
I think it's been good though.
Yeah, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. It's our intention, if you are willing to recommend approval to the Board of Commissioners, this is the final plan. We've done all of our final edits. We did take an extra month. We were hoping to actually move this forward in September, but based on all the responses we got and comments we got, we wanted to take a little bit of extra time to make sure that we went, you know, crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's, so on and so forth. And I think that the product that has been produced by Jamie and his team, as well as Kim Portillo here on staff, is, I think it's a stellar looking project. It looks good printed out, looks good digitally. We are in the process of working with Interface Studio to make an entirely Spanish version of the plan as well. So we're going to do a complete translation and get that up. That'll trail this plan a little bit, but we couldn't jump all those hurdles and go through all those obstacles that Jamie explained and not have a Spanish translation plan at the end of the day. So we're going to make that commitment and get that done hopefully as soon as possible, probably before the end of the calendar year.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Granger? Okay, Seeing none, I will stand. We're looking for a motion to recommend the plan. Is that correct, Gunnar?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you might want to see if there's anyone that would
I'm
like
sorry,
to
you're
speak.
correct. Yes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the plan that was presented this evening? Yes. Mr. Galicia?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Edgar Galicia, Central Avenue Betterment Association.
Yes.
I want to really commend the work that has been done for this plan. It has been a hard year for everybody, and engaging a totally multilingual community is not an easy task. I believe that all organizations involved did a very good job, and honestly, the results are very strong from CABA's perspective, and we are ready to lend a hand to work very actively into making as much of this plan possible in partnership with all of the UG and every single department. So I just want to extend a congratulations to the work done, and we hope that this passes.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or opposition to the plan? Okay. Seeing none, any further discussion? If not, I will stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve and recommend adoption of the Central, or I guess moved on to the Board of Commissioners for approval, the Central Avenue plan, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Jones. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Moeller?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the Central Area Master Plan passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. So this will now go on to the Board of Commissioners. Is that correct, Gunnar?
Yes, it will.
All right, thank you. Janet, is that the end of the agenda? Do we have anything else this evening?
No, sir, that is the end of the agenda.
All right, thank you all for your participation tonight, and this meeting stands adjourned.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you.
Yes,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
Janet. Thank you, Gunnar.